Okay, we're rolling. How's it going, Keith?
I'm well. How are you, Andres?
Dude, I'm great. Excited to have
Good.
a person in here. We haven't had a force person in here in a while, so it's good to have you back, or have
I'm ha-
have one of you back.
I'm happy to oblige.
All right. Question number one that we always start with: was it a
Mhm.
cult?
A good cult? Yeah,
Yeah.
sure. It was you know,
Cheers.
cheers. Yeah. Yeah. It was about principles over personalities. Usually the cult is about the like one leader, and there were many, with it.
Yeah.
Or we worship the golden idol of the volume library, maybe. But yeah.
Yeah. Who would
Mhm.
be the leader? Would it have been Dan Moore? I think.
I guess, but it's so hard because like Dan doesn't ever make it about himself, so that's
Yeah.
tough from a cult, right?
Yeah.
Like he likes to be in front of a group, but I don't feel like that's his vibe. Like, you
Yeah.
know,
No, I agree.
you know,
That's fair.
you
That's
know.
fair. All right, let me tell people who we got here in the house today. Keith Hoogheem is visiting us today. Man, I'm excited. Like I said, another Forest person, another Nebraska person. It's good to have a big old red alumni on here. You know what I'm saying? Just
Hmm.
good to be with the Nebraska crew. But currently Keith is in Mount Juliet, excuse me, in Tennessee. He sold for 5 summers with the Force from 2005 to 2009. Went to Doane College and then graduated from grad school in Nebraska. Let's go, Big Red. Love that
Hmm.
Husker degrees. You were originally from Holdrege, Nebraska. And wow, the metropolis of Holdrege. They have like a big jail
Huge.
there, right? Is
When
it a prison? Is it a jail?
they may have built one since I lived there. It was, yeah, or like West. I don't know that we had a big prison, or maybe they've had one. It was mostly feedlots, is what I remember. Like it was
Yeah,
when the wind blew a certain direction. Like
you
you were
got it
very
with.
you were very aware that the cows outnumbered the people. That was the main vibe.
You, yes, that's pretty much Nebraska though. Just cow flatulence and corn.
Yeah.
Um, Keith is a professional coach with Southwestern Consulting, and his favorite Ogmandino scroll is number 5. I will live this day as if it is my last. What a legendary scroll! You can find Keith on LinkedIn and on Facebook. And with that, let's jump in, my man. So, tell us a little bit. I always like to start with, what have you been up to since you left Southwestern? You can even
Yeah.
tell us why you knew it was time to leave Southwestern, and what was the journey up to 2024 since then? What's been the some of the highlights?
Oh, great. There's a few minutes in there. So what prompted me to leave? What prompted me to leave was the fact that I was getting serious with my girlfriend, who's now my wife. That was probably the biggest driver, honestly. Um,
Oh, a
yeah,
lady.
a lady who also sold books. So we left and got off schedule together, I guess.
Yeah, let's go.
Not during the summer, but
Never, of
no,
course.
never during the summer. But yeah, that was the probably the main driver, and I was full timing, so I did 5 summers, and I full timed. I brought teams, and it was just kind of that point at which, yeah, well, was starting to get serious with my girlfriend, and it felt like the whole my last summer I did it and Kristen did not, and so we definitely had that experience of I'm off in Pennsylvania selling books all summer, and she was living in Colorado at the time, and
Hmm.
I had a good summer that summer, but it was just kind of as the summer was going on, I felt the writing was on the wall, and I was like, yeah, I don't think this is going to be a, the thing I want to do again and again and again. So
Makes sense.
yeah.
Oof.
So anyway, so when I left Southwestern, I went and worked with Family Heritage, which
Oh,
at the time was still owned by Southwestern, so still a sister company at the time. Of course, tons and tons of Southwestern alums are over there, still are. And I went and I worked there for quite a while. I worked there for like 8 years or something along those lines. And then about 5 years ago, I came back to the family of companies. I often like to joke that I didn't ever leave Southwestern. Southwestern left me when they sold Family Heritage. So they sold it, and then I came back. We were kind of looking to make a move as a family. My wife actually had a job opportunity here in the Nashville area. We were living in Des Moines at the time, and it just kind of felt like the time was right to look at something different. And I, of course, worked with the legendary Yvette Keister at the time in books. Has worked with coaching for a number of years, and
legend.
it just absolutely, and it felt like a natural fit to come back to the family companies, and I really enjoy it. It's fun. Like every single person, I love the fact that with what we do at consulting, like every day I feel like I get it's so fun. I mean, like when you're on the book field, you hear the same accent all day long. I get to go from like the Northeast to the South to Wisconsin to the West Coast, so it's fun where I feel like I get zoomed into different parts of the country and all different fields and people selling all sorts of different things. And I really enjoy that aspect of getting to help people all over the place with what we do.
I love that.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to ask you some questions that we've asked some other of the consulting folks here, but
Sure.
then also I'll try to innovate with some new questions. So here we go. But I
Mhm.
guess first off, to do the obvious, can you explain maybe for people who don't know what Southwestern Consulting is, for how, I don't know how they would know, maybe they didn't sell books or maybe they're still first years and they don't know that this is a sister company. Like what do you do? How would you describe your role as Southwestern Consulting?
Good question. As a company, I mean, I think essentially the genesis of it, and I know that you've had several consulting founders on the
Yeah,
podcast.
actually.
So if people have missed it, go back.
We've had
Emmy's been on. I think Dave you've
Dave,
had
and
on.
Dustin.
Dustin you've had on, right? So really the conceit of the company makes a ton of sense, right? It's like, hey, for 150 years, Southwestern has been teaching college students all these principles of how to run a business, how to do direct sales. I mean, so many of the sales skills. I think that's something that now that I've been away from it for a while and I work with people in lots of different fields, I think when you come up through Southwestern and you get those things instilled in you as a college student, it's really easy to take for granted some of the skills and the things that you learned about running a business, about how to get referrals, how to answer objections, how to like do a proper introduction and build pain, and and figure out how to listen better. And not like, I think going into sales, like my thought is like, oh, I'll be good at this because I like to talk. And then of course you get into sales and you soon realize, oh, I do better when I talk less and listen more. So all those types of things, right? Like I just think there's all these skills that you learn, that the importance of attitude, right? I mean, all these principles and things that we get from Southwestern that I know that I just take for granted. But basically, so that's a long way of saying that, when the founders got together and we're going to form consulting, they said, hey, we've got all these principles and these things we've been teaching college kids for 150 years. Why are we keeping this to ourselves? People in other fields can use this stuff. They can use the technical skills that we teach these kids. They can use the emotional training when we're prepping kids, the recruiting, the managing a business, all those things. So we basically said, hey, principles transfer. It doesn't matter whether you're selling insurance or financial services or cars or whatever. There are certain principles of sales that work across all sorts of different fields. And let's take this to the rest of the business world. And so that's basically the mission, right? Is taking Southwestern principles essentially to the outside world, to civilians from Southwestern, and instilling those principles. And and so my role specifically is consulting does a few different things. We do training, we have a speaker service, and then kind of our bread and butter is one-on-one coaching. That's what I do. I'm a one-on-one coach. So I work with business leaders and sales owners, salespeople, and if you want to make it simple, we help people achieve their goals. That's what we do.
Now, do you find that there's industries that are more likely to have a coach, or is it pretty like of your client base, for example, are all of them in like direct marketing sales, or are they like all VPs, or or are they all in like insurance or solar, or do you find like a mix of, or are they all a certain age? Like, what are some of the demographics that you find interesting within the people that you coach?
Man, that's a great question. As far as the age thing goes, I think that's one of the things I find really cool about what we do is that you can get, like, I've coached people. Well, I mean, heck, some people that are on the book field get coaches, right? So I mean, you've got people that are maybe like ASLs, FSLs, or whatever they call those levels now. 20, 22-year-old, 24-year-old kids that get coaches. So like I've coached young people, not just book people, but in other fields that are very new into sales. And then I've coached people that, I mean, they've been in sales longer than I've been alive, So I think in terms of, no, and I think that's what's really great about Southwestern Consulting is that it doesn't really matter the field. And to that end, I mean, the short answer to your question would be yes. Are there industries where we see a lot more? For sure. Like if you were to look at the things that we coach the most of, you'd be looking at mortgage, financial services, financial advisors, insurance, real estate, right? Those are going to be the things that we probably coach the most of. But I've coached guys that sold roofing. I've coached
Oh,
guys.
really?
I coached a guy in the Northwest that sold windows to construction companies. He worked for the wholesaler and he sold windows. I coached a
Wow.
guy that sold HVAC. He sold I've coached a couple guys that sold air conditioners. Um, so lots of, and then actually I've got like, and then we think sales, and of course we coach lots and lots of salespeople, but it's definitely not limited to that. I mean, owning a business. I mean, if you own a business, you sell something, whether you
Right.
consider yourself a salesperson or not, right? And if you're a business owner and you have a team, you need to know, like, how do I recruit people? How do I hire? How do I fire if I have to? How do I train my people effectively? How do I motivate them? Like all these things. I don't care whether you got a sales team or you just have a team of W-2 employees. Like right now, I'll give you another random example. Um, I coach a guy, actually, it's a client that Yvette enrolled out in Western Nebraska. He is the maintenance manager for a hospital in Western Nebraska. So he doesn't do anything sales related, but he leads a team of like 4 or 5 blue collar maintenance guys. And we talk a lot about, leadership and,
Wow.
management topics. So that's the neat thing I think about coaching is that, yeah, if you want to make it really basic, just think about like, oh yeah, okay, we take Southwestern principles, we apply it to salespeople in other fields. We do a lot of that. But you think about too, like if you came back and you full time, you led teams, you were an org leader in the summer. I mean, there's so many things that you learned leadership wise, running a business wise, an organization that translate into other businesses as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, do you think that when you talk to people who had been in sales for a long time, do you ever find it a challenge to kind of earn your keep as far as their trust or coachability? Or I guess if they're paying for you, they're probably willing to be open. But I just see someone who's been like, Sonny, I've been in sales for 40 years, longer than you've been alive. And why would I listen to you? But it's like, because you're paying me to. But I guess, I don't know, like, how do you like confront that
Yeah,
if you run into it?
good question. Yeah, that guy doesn't sign up usually. Is the
Yeah,
is
I
the first
figured not
answer.
because they're paying you, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, let's just be honest. Like, I think that's one of the first steps to getting into coaching, right? Like, we talk about when we enroll people into coaching, we talk about the 3 C's. We talk about if coaching is going to work for you, you need to be coachable, committed, and ready to change. Um, and that, I think the last one is probably the most important because, of course, there's so many people that if I were to go out and talk to them, do they want to change? Like, it's not hard to find somebody that wants to make more money doing what they're already doing. The question becomes, do you actually want to change what you're doing in order to earn more money at what you're doing? Because if you're just going to keep doing the same stuff, but then expect to get a different result, we know what that is. So
Right.
yeah, do we get even people that sign up? I do think there are. Most of the time, I think it's great. Like most people, when they say, "Yeah, I'm coachable, I'm committed, I'm ready for change," they come in pretty open minded. Not like there's degrees for sure, but they're usually at least like, "Hey, I'm paying for a coach. I know that I need to do some things differently. I'm looking for an outside voice." But there are still sometimes people that you get in that I think misunderstand what coaching is, and they maybe think, "Oh yeah, I'd like some different results, and let me just pay this money, and they'll wave a magic wand, and suddenly, like I'll get
Yeah.
better results." And then they get into it and they realize, no, we're actually going to have to like work on some stuff and change
Hmm.
some things that if you want to, see something different happen. So
That's
that
sweet.
that does happen from time to time. And when that happens, we have to lean in and we have to attack that. And we have to figure out like, what do you really want out of it? Like what do you really want? Like, are you really willing? What do you want more? Do you want the result that you say that you want, or do you want to stay the same? And that's a question that they've got to answer for themselves.
Damn. That, I guess that's true. I mean, it's kind of like the old dog story in the man in the porch and the dog. You know what I'm talking about? And the grandpa. Ever
Hmm.
heard this?
I
When it
don't know.
was like there's a dog and a grandpa just sitting there on a porch, and the little kid, is noticing that every time the grandpa rocks the chair back and forth, the one of the rocking legs kind of goes over the dog's tail, and the dog goes, "Arr,"
Hmm.
but he doesn't move. And he
Hmm.
goes, "Arr." every time he's rocking. And the little kid goes, Grandpa, how come he doesn't move? And he goes, because it doesn't hurt bad enough.
Yeah.
So the idea is that like some people are going through pain that they think they're able to quote unquote tolerate, but they don't have to. And they don't realize that by changing or just moving, in this dog's case, then that even though it doesn't hurt that bad, it could just not hurt at all by just having some action and being willing to change or move, right? So,
which is true of anything in your life, right? I mean, we talk about that in a business context, but I mean, that applies when people are talking about their health or, their financial life or their spiritual life or their relationships. And they're like, if you want to see a change, I mean, that's just true of anything. If you want to see a change in what's happening, like, you got to be open to the idea that you got to try some things differently. I always use the example often on coaching, and I love this when it comes to coachability. I'll often share this story on a first call with a new client. When I read I'll do a short version, but basically I read an interview one time with Phil Jackson, and I really liked the way that he framed coachability, because the interviewer was basically asking him some version of, how did it work between you and Michael Jordan? Like, why were you guys able to be so successful together? Right.
Which is a great question.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, well, because if you think back, like now, of course, we think of Phil Jackson, like Phil Jackson's won 11 NBA championships and Michael Jordan 6 and the greatest player of all time. But like at the time when Phil Jackson became the coach of the Bulls, none of that was true. Right. I think it might've been Phil's first head coaching job. Like he had played back in the 70s. He was a player.
And but he wasn't in Puerto Rico or something.
Yeah.
He wasn't like the guy.
No, like he wasn't coming in, like he didn't have this incredible resume to say, yeah, Mike, listen to me. Like, I know what I'm doing. Like he was really unproven in that regard. And so anyway, in the interview, I really loved his answer. He said something to the effect of, the only reason it worked between Michael and I was that Michael allowed me to coach him. He allowed me to coach him. And I stick with that because it's so true. Because if you think back to that time, like Michael Jordan at that point had already, I think he'd already won an MVP by that point. He definitely had won a scoring title. Like he was already like a proven great player.
He came in like 87 and had like 5 frustrating seasons where he did carry the Bulls for a while, but people were like, oh, this guy's the man. Like he was already the man.
Yeah, he was already a great player, but he hadn't won an NBA title, right? And so when Phil came in and he's kind of this unproven coach, he recognized, like, let's be honest, if it didn't go well between Phil Jackson and Michael Jordan, they sure as heck weren't going to send Michael Jordan packing out of Chicago. It was going to be Phil.
Yeah.
And Phil knew that going into that scenario, and Michael knew what a cachet he had and the power he had, and like he knew all of that. And so it would have been really easy for Michael, right, to just say, who's this joker? I don't need to listen to this guy. And so I think that's, and that's the point Phil's trying to make, is that Michael had to allow himself to be coached. He had to like be willing to say, I may be a great player. I may score a lot of points, but we haven't won a title. Obviously there's something that I'm not getting. And maybe this guy has something that he can teach me and help me with. And, the rest was history. But I love that part, right? Like Phil knew the score, Michael knew the score. And that's the only way that, I don't care what it is. Like that's just kind of table stakes for coaching, period. And anything that you do is you got to be willing to say, hey, I'm not where I'd like to be. And there's probably some things I got to be open to doing differently if I want to get there.
Even if you believe you're the best.
Yeah.
Or even if you believe that you got it. I mean, that you know what's up, because Michael knew what's up.
Sure.
But that outside perspective is big. And, that also speaks to the level of like humility that you can still have while being great at what you do.
It's my favorite thing.
Right.
It is like what your point that you just made right there, Andres. It's my favorite thing when I find it in, business leaders and salespeople out there in the world, when we're calling on people or when I get a new coaching client, is that like humility is to me it's one of the things that I respect the most in another person, when they can be absolutely great at what they do. And yet they have a humility to say, but I can still get better. Like I don't have it all figured out. Like that to me is like, come on. And that's, and that's to your point about like demographics. That's really what it's about. Because here's the thing. There are people that are nowhere close to the best in their field that aren't coachable at all. not coachable at all. And then there are people that you'll meet, and that's always, I think, the irony when you walk into a room and you do a workshop and you meet a group of salespeople. The people most likely to sign up in that room are the people that are doing the best. And
Yeah.
and you would look at that and say, well, wait a minute, why are they signing up for coach? It's because they're signing up for coach. That's why they're the best. Like, they're willing
Yeah.
to constantly.
They understand it's a collaboration.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I read this quote today. It was the people at the bottom compete, the people at the top collaborate.
Hmm.
And I was like, oh, that's so good. Because it shows that, like, there's so many, like, there's in business that's so applicable, right? Where it's like you could be the best salesperson or you could be the best, CEO or whatever, but you're still going to need, like, a sales department. You're still going to need a marketing department. You're still going to need legal advice. So even though you're the best at, like, the thing, a team is always going to be something that you're going to surround with. So collaborating and team effort is going to be always more important than, just trying to be to hoard and be like, oh, that's me, I'm gonna win by myself. So sometimes I feel like entrepreneurs, especially book people, can get this way where it's like, I have to win, I have to win, I have to win, I have to win,
Hmm.
and they forget that it's like, hey, there's more to it than just what you want when it comes to running a successful business. Because in the book field, we were running a business, but really we were just selling our own books for our own thing, right? But when you get out into the real world, it's like, this is more than just about you. And so acknowledging in a way that, for example, in this case, hey, I need a coach, right?
Mhm.
I need to collaborate with someone to work together to help me improve. That's huge. That's a huge thing to realize. That's
Well, and
awesome, man.
I don't care what level you're at. I just really, really respect anyone that has a recognition to say, I'm not a finished product. I can continue to grow. I mean, look at the people that like. I'm a huge sports fan. I love sports. The people that we revere the most. I mean, come on. Like, did Tom Brady, is Tom Brady the best because he got to a certain level and then he said, well, this is it. This is as good as I can get. I can just coast. Heck no.
Right.
Like, Kobe would work on stuff every freaking summer to get better, right? He'd try to add something to his game all the time. LeBron does that. Anybody that you look at that is in the sport, I love, like I said, I just love sports, so I like using those as analogies. The very best of the best of the best, they get coached. They, like, have a coach for their team. They often have individual coaches, and they're constantly trying to push the boat out a little bit farther on, because they know that they can, like, just because they're good doesn't mean what got them there is going to get them to the next level, and they're
Yeah.
willing to keep growing. So I respect the heck out of that.
On that vein, a tangential question: how do you define greatness?
That's a good
Sorry to put you on
question.
the spot there, but I was just like, I'm asking you because I literally asked my wife this last night over dinner, and she gave me, she's like, we were just talking about greatness and I'm gonna say this so to give you some time to think, but basically we went to go get pizza, and this bar in Portland here where I am has this really cool thing where they just play old Michael Jordan Bulls games, like the famous ones, on a
Okay.
loop on YouTube, which is, I was like, that's funny.
Okay.
And they were playing whatever, so we were just talking about Michael Jordan. So this is my second in a row night talking about the greatness of Michael Jordan,
Great. Yeah.
because I mean, why not, right? And we were talking about it, and I just asked her, like, what do you think of, like, that? Because my wife is not into sports at all, but she's aware of the humans that are great, or who
Sure.
are, like, And I was like, to you that didn't, don't really like watching sports, like, how do you define greatness? And so she was just talking about how the fact that a person can realize and have a balance of understanding that they're the best, but also not pretending like they are. They're
Mm.
understanding that they're still human, even though that they're the best at this individual thing, but then at the same time having a drive to improve while still being able to maintain some sort of normalcy or humility to understand, like, kind of like what we're talking about right now. It's just like, it's that balance of, I believe I'm the best, but also that's not the most important thing in the world. And balancing that correctly is what leads to that level of greatness, because you have to have the drive, but you also have to have the humility, I
Yeah.
think. Anyway, that's how she defined it, but over to you, Keith.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know that I can top that. I mean, I think that is something about the people. When you think about sports, when you look at the people that are truly what we consider to be great, I think they all have that spirit of, yeah, sure, they're competitive. They have a drive and a will to win. But I think, yeah, even more than that, it's they have that continual hunger to want to improve, right? They They don't just stop. They don't just rest and say like, well, I guess this is as good as I can be. Um, yeah, I
Yeah.
think that is a big part of it for sure.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant. And then one last question about consulting, and then we can move on to some fun Southwestern stories. But
Mm.
for you, as you look at your future with Southwestern Consulting, what are Keith's like, goals, North Star? Where do you see yourself going in your career here with consulting?
Ooh, that's a great question. Well, I mean, continuing to grow. I mean, it's definitely continuing to coach well, bring more people into coaching. Um, I haven't, at some point, would like to make team leader, would like to continue to grow the organization. Because I think the biggest thing for me with Southwestern and the thing that brought me back is I love Southwestern people. I don't know. There's just something about maybe not all of them, but for the most part, it's not like if you carried a book bag, you're immediately on my favorite list. But like a lot, I just
It's highly likely though,
it
right?
helps. Yeah, it
It's
helps.
weird how that happens, which I think is
Yeah,
the purpose of this podcast, but that's besides the point. So go
yeah,
on. Go on.
yeah. So for me, it's continuing. I mean, it's continuing to grow. It's continuing to grow as a coach. It's continuing to grow as a salesperson, as a leader, um, growing our organization. Because I really do believe in what it is that we do. I mean, I think the impact. We talk about rather than just making a sale, we refer to enrolling someone in coaching as changing a life. And that can be just kind of a nice thing that you say, but it also when you coach people and you see the way that people's confidence can change and just the trajectory of how they view themselves and their beliefs and their attitude around themselves and where they're going, it's really intoxicating when you get to see that happening in a person. And so I think continuing to impact as many people as we can in that way, um, is something that I want to be a part of, and it's something that I want to continue to help grow the consulting.
That's sick.
Yeah.
Actually, sorry, I lied to you. I have one more question. You
Okay.
just made me think of it. I think I asked Emmy this, but what is there a client that you have that you're the most proud of? You don't have to say their name or anything, but just like maybe
Hmm.
why or how, what happened that you were like, man, this person was this, that, and then they turned it around and did this, that.
Sure. There's a guy that I coach. There's probably several examples, but I'll pick this one. There's a guy I coach in Southern Indiana, and I've been coaching. I think we've done like 120 calls at this point. I've been coaching now for like I don't know whatever that is, almost 6 years type thing, for over 5 years.
Wow.
And he works with Aflac, and he's gone from being uh, a district sales leader with kind of a pretty small team, and he was kind of coming off a really frustrating year for him. His confidence was really shaken, and I think he was really questioning whether or not he was even in the right business, right? Like he was in the right place. And over the course of that time, he's gone from being a district with a few people to his team growing, and then him becoming a regional sales leader and getting a few
Wow.
districts under him. And now he just got to the point here at the end of December. I was super excited for him. He basically now is in charge of all of Southern Indiana, and he's got like 6 other district leaders that are underneath him. And there's kind of like, and he's on a trajectory for more. Like he's not done where he's at. And so that's been really, really gratifying to watch, not just because of what it's done to him, and you can tell the growth that he's had and the confidence that he has, but because he's a leader, the impact that that's what's so cool, I think, about coaching. Like when you impact a leader, it's it spiders out, right? Like the
That's a
impact
good
that
way.
they then have on all of their people, and then hopefully the impact that their people have on the people that they interact with. That's what I think can be really, really cool to think about if you really sit down and extrapolate it out. It's like, man, by coaching one person, how many people can we actually have an impact on?
Yeah,
You know, so that's
that's
been,
cool.
yeah.
That's a good answer. I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you.
Mhm.
All right, man. Well, heck, what do you say we roll the clocks back? And I know you have a list of stories to tell us, so I guess I'll
Yeah,
just kind of go. We'll just go chronologically, and as they pop
yeah,
up to you or whatever. Of course, I always like to ask about the firsts and about how you originally got into Southwestern. So we'll just
yeah.
start there. Let's wind the clocks back. Let's go back to 2005 slash maybe fall of 2004. You're just minding your own business in this little uh, campus of Doane College. Is it Tigers? I think the Tigers.
The Doane Tigers. That's
The Doane
correct.
Tigers, right? You're
It's
just
long.
sitting
It's
there.
long enough. Andres is long enough ago now that they changed the name of my college. It went from Doane College to now it's Doane University. Like I got an upgrade on my
Look at
degree.
you. So, excuse me, sir.
Yeah,
You're sitting at the former
University.
Doane College, now very proudly known as Doane University, and this
Yeah.
beautiful campus. It is a beautiful campus. Let's be honest. It's
It is. Yeah.
a little Crete, Nebraska, population
Yeah.
600 when school is not in session, and so
Yeah. And that's mostly like the meat packing plant, I think, is most of
it's like 600 and then 1300 when school's in session.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But how did you start with this journey?
Well, so my journey getting into Southwestern is actually, I had heard about Southwestern before I came to do Southwestern, actually. So I guess a little bit, if we consider the traditional path to be like, oh, little 18-year-old freshman gets recruited by somebody in their dorm room. That was not my path. I did not go after my freshman year. I did more of the traditional stuff. So like when you would do the info session and talk about the jobs back home, I did that. Like I worked for the county one summer. I worked for the weed department, like that. There's some stories there. Let me tell you. No, like it's not interesting. I worked for the Phelps County, weed department one summer. Real incredible. Like that looked incredible on a resume. Let me tell you.
Not a dispensary, mind you.
No, just like
weed department means a lot of different things now, and especially in Oregon.
Not in Nebraska though. It does not. Not in Nebraska.
Nebraska might be the last or second to last state to legalize marijuana, but that's okay.
Yeah, exactly. They'll be holding on to, they'll be the last holdout for sure. But yeah, no. So I had a summer where I worked for the county. I worked for in high school, I worked at a grocery store. I worked for a grocery store one summer. So anyway, like I had gone back multiple summers and lived at home and did that whole thing. And at the time, oddly enough, so small town, right? I graduated with like 90 kids. One of the people that I graduated high school with was Matt Atchison, who's been on this podcast.
Legend.
Absolute legend. I haven't been around but like I would say, probably, I mean, he's got to be in the top 1% of salespeople that's ever gone through Southwestern. I mean, I followed him on numerous occasions. Really, like one of the best. I mean, probably the best salesperson I've ever followed. Honestly,
it's insane, right? Actually, I later on I do want to ask you what that experience was like, because I hear even the way he sold compared to other legends like Yvette or Grant or even like Ron Alford or something like that, or Dustin. Something about the way Matt Atchison is and exists is just a different beast. Same animal, different beast.
Matt's ability to connect with other people, like his emotional intelligence, is just it's off the charts. Like that was the thing I always felt like following him is, yes, he was duplicated. Like he was duplicatable to the sense that yes, he did the sales talk and you heard basically the same version, but he had an uncanny ability to know. It just felt like he knew what to say in the moment, right? Like he was very good at mirroring the person that he was with, and matching them. But
he's the Michael Jordan of that.
He's very good at it. Yeah, incredibly good at it. And I've got some other stories I could talk about with Matt because I lived with Matt my first summer. So anyway, Matt,
we'll get to those.
Yeah, we'll get to some of those. So Matt and I went to high school together. We actually we gave the commencement address at our high school graduation together. But interestingly, like Matt and I were not really like, we kind of, even though we're in obviously it's a small town, it's a pretty small high school, 90 kids in our graduating class or so, but we kind of did opposite things. I was like young for my grade and a little bit of a late bloomer. And so I just wasn't very good at sports, even in a small town. And so I gravitated, by the time I got to high school, I did like speech and debate and theater and music. I sang in the choir.
Did you do show choir?
I did show choir.
Yeah, I'm a show choir kid too, man. Let's go.
Well, this is going to lead into this story because I did choir in college too, and that plays in. But so I sang in the choir, I played trumpet in the band. So I did like all the art stuff. And Matt was very much, he actually grew up in Holdridge when he was really little. He moved away to Columbus. His dad was our guidance counselor. And then he moved back when he was a sophomore. So freshman year, he wasn't there. He moved back. I think it was, freshman, somewhere like that, beginning of high school. So he's our guidance counselor in high school. Matt moved back. He's doing the sports stuff. So we really didn't actually know each other extraordinarily well. We didn't hang out a lot. We kind of ran in opposite circles because he he like did more sports. He did track and basketball and wrestling and stuff like that. And so la-di-da, go to college. I'm doing the summer job thing. I almost got into books one summer. I went to an info session. I remember very well. I think it's Mandy. I'm pretty sure it was Mandy Didier, I think was her maiden name. Now Pinkston, Willie Pinkston's wife, Mandy. I think her maiden name was Didier.
Mandy, if you're listening, welcome to the show anytime.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, this isn't a bad story. This makes her look good. She was doing the right thing. She was an in-schooler. She went to Concordia, which is in Seward, right? Nebraska.
Yeah, another metropolis.
Another small school like Dome. But anyway, she worked with JYD. So I don't know how that happened. If she like had a friend that recruited her.
Boo. I'm so sorry. Everyone from JYD, I apologize.
Yeah,
it's not that you're not great, but Forrest is better. Anyway, moving on.
There you go. So anyway, I remember I almost went. Interesting. Yeah, it's funny. I haven't thought about this in forever. I almost sold books. I almost had the traditional story. So Mandy, she was probably a sophomore, a junior at Seward. And when they had their spring break, she did the thing where she went to other schools to recruit on her spring break. So she came to Doane and she like did some info sessions, and I went to one in like March of my freshman year. And I sat through the info session and I was into it. I'm like, how much money can you make? This sounds interesting. And here's this, girl from Concordia from Western Nebraska. And I'm like, okay, that's cool. So I went through the process, was really interested, got selected, was actually going to, I thought I was going to do it. And then,
you went cold?
Here's why. Yeah.
What's her name? You left already.
It is. It is. But it's
you
not
left because of a woman. You couldn't go the first time.
It's the opposite. It is because of a woman, but it's the opposite way. The girl that I was dating, and this is fine. Like I haven't talked to her in forever, but we'd be friends. I think she wouldn't care. But I dated in high school. I dated again. More. No, it doesn't matter. I don't have to use her name, I guess. I dated a gal in high school, and she and I both went to Doane, and we were dating our freshman year. We had broken up during our freshman year. Oh. She also got selected to go sell books. And so it was
you can't go with Morta your first summer. That's like emotional imbalance.
So it was like this thing of like I'm really interested in this. I'm like, this summer job sounds cool, and I'd love to go make a bunch of money. It's all good. And I think she maybe even did a parent visit. My parents were like, yeah, fine, you can go do it. But then it was like, she also got selected and we would have been on the same team in the same area. And I was just like, I don't think that's going to work. And so that's why I went cold. So
wise choice.
Yeah, well, it worked out okay. I came back around. So anyway, she ended up, the girl that I had dated, the ex-girlfriend, and she comes back in the story, which is good. And again, there's nothing but it's not bad. Like I could say her name. It's not a big deal, but she did go to sell books. So she ended up going to sell that summer. I went home and worked for the county or whatever I did that summer, or the grocery store, and didn't think really twice about it. Just la-di-da-di-da. Fast forward 3 years later. So 3 years later, when I'm a senior, so I didn't sell all the way through. When I'm a senior, Atchison that same summer had gone off and been the number one rookie in power. I mean, he did whatever, like 6,000, whatever units he did as a first year up in New York or wherever he went, or Maine, I don't know. But anyway, so he was the number one rookie his first year. And I remember kind of hearing about that, I think, through the grapevine. But again, Matt and I weren't like close friends. And so I maybe had heard about it tangentially, but it wasn't really in my consciousness. And then he didn't come back for that second summer. And then he came back as a junior in college, crushed it as a junior. And then senior, by that point, he was now all in. And now he's like recruiting as a senior in college. He went to Creighton. He was recruiting a team, and he was like all in on that and building, right? And so at that point, he called me and said, hey, have you heard of this book thing that I do? And I'm like, yeah, I think I've kind of heard about that. And so anyway, already very long story short, that was how it happened, where he called me. And then at that point, I was a pretty easy sale, honestly. Like I'd already heard about it before. Matt had gone and made a ton of money, killed it, right?
He sold like 10,000 units at second
summer. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, which is, again, just speaking to the legendariness of that, that's bananas.
So obviously he had done really well. Here's a guy I went to high school with. To me, it was just like, whatever apprehensions that you would maybe normally have, like they were just kind of answered. I'm like, well, if Matt can do it, why can't, I was like, I can do it. Why not? Like I knew it. Here's the thing. I don't know that I thought, like, I didn't think I could go, like he had been number one. I don't think I can do that, but I could probably make it, when they told you what average was, I'm like, I'm sure I can do the average. And 10 grand or whatever.
I'll take that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Same. Yeah.
I may not make 50 like Matt, but I could probably make 10, and that'd be way better than the weed department.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that was how I got into it. And then I don't really remember, like, I think he maybe like reached out to me around, I don't know if it was Christmas break, spring break, but whatever. But it was really not that interesting from there. He and Yvette did a parent visit with my parents, and they were totally cool. I mean, at that point, I was like 21. I was graduating college. Like, what did they care? They're like, yeah, fine, go.
Whatever you want to do.
You need to make money. Like, please go. You know, fine, go do it.
You went from making weed department money to weed dealer money.
Weed dealer money. Yeah, like, yeah.
That was an upgrade.
Yeah. It was a very, very much an upgrade. Yeah. Which is true, because I had a really good first summer. So then I'll fast forward. So then story-wise, that was interesting. This is where Morta comes back into play. So so she actually sold all the way through college. And I knew this. Like, I knew that she sold in the summers. Like, she had sold after her freshman, sophomore, junior years, and she was going back.
In the same org, too. So
she would have but now it was different, right? But she was still JYD, because she got recruited by Mandy.
Oh, that's right.
So she was JYD.
That's right.
And so she had been 3 summers with JYD, and I was now with Matt. So now I'm forced, right? Because now been recruited by that group.
The greatest organization of all time.
Yeah. For opportunity rarely comes easily.
That's right.
That's it. So, I mean, and once I met Grant, I mean, how could I not? I mean, the deal was sealed at that point.
Grant. In fact, actually, we're recording, just FYI, to keep an eye out for this, we're recording a Matt's not coming with 2. We're recording a Grant and Yvette episode next week.
Great. Perfect.
So for people listening to this, just keep your eyes out for that, because it'll be coming up.
And your ears, see how many meows you get out of Grant during this.
Can you imagine? Because we've had Grant and we've had Yvette. Can you imagine a joint? Because they're both kicking ass with what they're doing now. So I'm like, hey, I want you guys to come back on the show. We'll do a shared, like, how did you build this crazy organization? And then we'll talk about how to succeed past Southwestern. Because you've only not proven it in Southwestern, but you proved it beyond. And I mean, even though they're working for sister companies, like, you know what I'm saying? So sorry, little teaser there for you.
Plus, with Grant and Yvette, you get the yin and the yang. Like, Grant tells some crazy story, and then Yvette tells him why that's totally wrong. and corrects the story.
If anybody's ever been in a room with Grant and Yvette at the same time, just hanging out and drinking beer, you're gonna know this is gonna be. I know we're harping on this already. We're hyping this episode up, but it's gonna be awesome.
Oh, it'll be great.
So you were with Grant.
So I came on board. So now here was the thing, though. Here's the snafu. So I'm a senior. As I mentioned, established already. I sang in the choir in college as well, and our college choir just so happened that year to be doing an international trip at the end of the year. So first off, Doane gets out a week after the University of Nebraska does. So I would have gone to sales school after the bulk of the force group anyway, because I went to Doane. But then on top of that, we had this 3-week choir tour to Germany that we were going on. So week after them anyway, and then I went to Germany with the choir, and we traveled all around, sang in a bunch of cool churches and whatnot, and then got back. So by the time I get back to America, keeping in mind Morta, the gal that was ex-girlfriend from high school freshman year, been selling this whole time, she's planning on going to sales school at the same time but at this point we're cool, like we've been in college together the whole time, and she's in the choir too. So we're both on this choir trip, and then we get back, she and another girl that had been recruited at Doane as a rookie on Morta's team, we're all going caravan together to Nashville, and we're joining up with sales school. So this is one of my favorite first parts about my experiences. So first off, you got that. Like, I'm as a rookie, although at least I'm older, so I think that helped, but I'm going to sales school a month after my entire organization. They've all been on the book field for 4 weeks by the time I showed up. So I'm in sales school, and it's like week 4 they're like grizzled veterans by the time.
They've already gone past that 3-week curve that they talk about. Like,
a third of the rookies had like quit by the time I showed up.
But the kids are already hitting PC almost by the time you show up.
Kids are hitting PC, and then I remember that was another funny thing. I remember showing up so we drove how long a drive is to the New England, which is where we always sold in the force group. And by the time I got up there on a Sunday, I went to the Sunday meeting at some random hotel in southern New Hampshire, and I'm like, I had met the team beforehand at some on campus. I'm like, where's the rest of the team? Like, what happened?
What happened?
A third of them are gone.
Where's Jamie?
What happened to Tim? What happened to Tim? Forget about Tim.
He's an early champion. Get out of here, Tim.
It's like, we don't talk about Tim.
He's no longer with us.
Don't ask questions. Go to work. Do 30 demos, right?
Those are the kind of answers that you get that you're like, this might be a cult. This might be no longer with us. Wow. All right.
Yeah, no longer with us. He drank the Kool-Aid. But, well, he didn't drink the Kool-Aid. That's why he left.
He didn't buy in. Are you buying in? Be coachable.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Well,
I'm
like,
sorry.
but of course, I'm at this point like, well, Matt, I trust Matt. Like, I guess those guys just couldn't hack it, whatever, right? But what I wanted to say that was so great, this is so, but again, what's so funny, I think, about all these experiences is that, like, with hindsight, we look back on things that are crazy, but in the moment, you don't know what you don't know, right? So you just show up and that's like just your reality. This is what it is. And so I remember, what I wanted to say was when we got back, so, okay, 4 weeks getting there, sales school, load up, caravan with Morta and her rookie. We go, by the time we get there, because again, it's 4 weeks later, not only is my group not there, like all of the Americans have basically been through sales school at this point. So it was me, Morta, her rookie, and like 6 other, like a ragtag crew of other stragglers that were American coming in, and then like 1,000 Eastern Europeans.
Yeah, like Bulgarian, Estonians, and Latvians. Just
so I remember
we come to sell books. You're like,
and that was the whole thing. So that was the funny thing. So we're doing the whole thing. So we make like this hodgepodge, like basically we're the American org during sales school. Like these 10, hey, this guy's from Arizona, and that guy's from Maine, and this guy's from, UW and whatever. And so we got these 10 people, and I kid you, I mean, maybe it's not 1,000, but it's like 800 like Europeans. And I just remember, oddly, what I remember about that is it gave me so much confidence.
Yeah.
Because if you think about it, like I'm here, and who are you comparing? Every time we've got a second and you're like practicing and doing door demos, it's somebody with this super thick Eastern European accent.
Yeah.
And I'm the entire time thinking to myself, well, I'm definitely going to do better than these guys.
Yeah, they don't even speak English.
No.
Like the only English they speak is what they've memorized from the sales talk. If anybody asks them any question outside of that, they are deer in the headlights.
Dunzo.
And quick pause on a side note here, tangentially. Incredible that they can do that. Incredible how many books they sell. It's actually, but I mean, I was there. We took a Euro trip last fall and visited a bunch of book kids in Europe, Eastern Europe. We were in Bulgaria and the Czech Republic and Poland and stuff, and it was just amazing how they could do that. I mean, I was like, can you imagine going to sell door to door in Poland? You have to speak Polish. Like,
Polish?
That's the exact same thing. It's crazy what they do. It's so shout out to them because, damn.
Well, and that was it. Like, I'm laughing about it, but like, really, that was my overriding thought. I mean, it literally was like, what is my excuse? Like, I have at this point, like, I have a college degree. Like, I'm 21. I have a college degree, and these kids are like 18, halfway around the world, barely speak the language, and they're going to go out there and they're going to knock on doors for 13 hours a day.
Yeah. I was like, culture, they don't know how to drive in this country, like crazy.
And so that really was part of it. It's like every time I would do it, it was just kind of like solidifying in my head, like, dude, what is your excuse? Like, if these kids can do that,
wow.
I mean, come on. Like, you can go out and go knock on some doors and talk. Like, you at least speak the language.
Wow. I mean, what a cool blessing for you in disguise.
It was, yeah.
Yeah, that's so awesome.
It absolutely was. And oh, go ahead.
Oh no, finish your thought. I had another question, but you go ahead.
I don't know that I remember.
I derailed you. Dang, man, I was doing so good at hosting, and then I just screwed it up. What do you know? It's a casual conversation. I do have a question for you before that. By the way, big shout out to Enlight Energy. Thanks for posting and making this video and this podcast possible. Julio Hernandez. If you guys are looking for a career change and want to go into solar, learn a little bit more about how that you can make over 150K a year on average, let us know. Okay, question for you. So I always like asking about firsts. Mm-hmm. Like first door, first customer that you remember. If you remember these, great. If you don't remember some of these, no problem. But walk me through like the first door you knocked on. The first time someone actually bought that you were like, holy shit, this works. Like they actually told me something and it worked. How did that go for you?
So my first day was a really awesome object lesson in everything that we got taught in sales school. And so I was joking earlier about, so the first thing is I drove all the way up there, by myself. Because remember, like the other two that I'd come to Nashville with weren't in my org. So
Yeah,
Yvette was still in Nashville, and she's like, "Here's where you're going," and I'm like, "Cool." And so I just drove by myself from Nashville to the Sunday meeting. But I
Where
made
were
it.
you?
We were in southern New Hampshire. I lived with Matt. I lived in Merrimack, New Hampshire, which is between
Oh yeah, I
Manchester.
sold in Merrimack.
Oh, there you go. Cool.
Yeah,
We lived there. It was awesome. Like I love I had a great experience my first summer.
dude, I crushed it out there. Did I sell over you? Oh my god!
I didn't sell in. I sold east of there. I sold in Auburn, New Hampshire.
Okay.
Which was east of there a little bit, in Chester, New Hampshire, I think.
Yep. And
those
then
are both.
I sold in Kingston and South Kingston, which are north of Merrimack.
Yeah.
I destroyed South Kingston, bro.
Yeah. Yeah. I loved
Mark.
Yeah, I really enjoyed Southern New Hampshire. It was a great first summer.
It's great territory.
It's great.
And when people say territory doesn't matter. Yeah.
There's money. It's country. It's all the territory I was working. It was like acre. Everybody had like a house on an acre.
Yeah.
And there were I remember them talking about week orders. I think I can count on one hand in my 5 summers the number of week orders I took.
Dude,
like there's just there's no need. They could either afford them or they weren't getting them. Like that was it. Like,
it was simple. It was quick and easy. Dude, like I remember selling in that area and it was like the money objection barely came up. No. And if it did, you just kind of looked at them like
they just didn't want them. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, it's not because it's expensive. This is going to be something else. Cause you spend thousands of dollars a month on just the chandelier.
I know what the payment on that boat probably is out
there. And there was Phillips Academy Exeter and Phillips Academy North Andover, which I also sold in Massachusetts there.
I sold in North Andover.
Same. Oh my God, dude.
My fourth summer.
Anybody else that's met there?
My fourth summer I lived in, fourth summer I lived in Haverhill, Massachusetts.
Hey, so did we.
Yeah.
Dude, there was a host mom that had actually bought from Courtney Rowan, which might have been right around their time. She sold and they hosted the Bledowitz and they hosted her and they only wanted girls because they had 3 daughters and they were like, hey, but then they met us and they're like, oh, these guys are fine. And then we sold in Haverhill. We ate at Andino's Pizza. They had the Miss Piggy right in Haverhill. Dude, oh my gosh, someone who's been with me. That's how you connected with Danny.
Yes.
He sold with me in Haverhill. I mean, sold in Haverhill. Nice. But then my territory was in Middleton, North Andover.
Haverhill, Haverhill was a little rough. Like down in the, like it was not, I remember driving through to go to our breakfast spot and I'm like, yeah, this ain't my turf. Like,
it's not safe. No, but North Andover and then Andover, of course, is rich. I mean, this is big break.
Oh my God. Yeah. And as you said, Phillips Andover, I mean, it's one of the fancy, Phillips Exeter, Phillips Andover, like 2 of the fanciest boarding school. I don't know if they're boarding, but whatever.
It's a private school, and then it's like $50,000 a year to go to school there.
So your point, we sold the same turf that I remember driving around the school to sell, and that was always the best. Like when I met a family that sent their kid, which wasn't very many because obviously it was really expensive. But when you met someone that sent their kid to North Andover, they looked at you like you were like, why would I buy your books? I spend $1 billion a year.
Dude, can I tell you that? I mean, I've told the story before, but I'll tell it to you because you haven't heard it. But the biggest rejection story I've ever told. I know we're on you right now, so I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
Dude, the biggest. I mean, I'm talking about where I'm like, I cannot believe. I mean, we've heard rejection, but this was
soul crushing.
This was almost like it was so soul crushing that I didn't even take it personally. I was like, I cannot believe that someone can do that to another human being. So a guy comes in, I knock on the door. People who have heard this podcast religiously have heard the story at least 3 or 4 times. So sorry, but some people, this is their first episode. So here we go. So knock on this door and the guy goes, I go, hey, I'm just selling some educational stuff. And he goes, come in. And you're thinking at this point, because whenever you had someone just let you come in, especially in Massachusetts, especially with Big Break, you're thinking, oh, pony.
They've heard of me. Yeah.
Guy takes out his checkbook and he goes, educational stuff. What kind of educational stuff? And he holding his checkbook, and I go, "Oh, this is like these books helps kids save time with homework." And you don't even say kids struggling with school in this territory because none of them are. They're all getting straight A's. So
they're all geniuses. All of them are. Yeah,
it's wild, and you have to be like, "Hey, this is going to help them save time," because also they're all involved in all the sports, so that's like the need. So anyway, he goes, "Oh, okay, wait," and he writes $4,500 on his check, signs it, rips it up, and I'm like, "What the hell?" And he goes, this is how much I pay a month to take my kid to school. What the fuck do I need you for? Get out of my house. And then he just kicks me out. And he slams the door behind me. And I'm like, I cannot believe you had me come in inside your house to sign this check in front of me. Like
that's one where I almost want to
amazing.
knock. I almost want to knock on the door again and be like, "Are you okay?
It's like, who are you?
You
Like
need a welfare check, man."
it was so outrageous because people were just like, "Fuck off, get out of here.
Yeah.
I'm not interested." They tell you, you know, you suck. Nobody likes you. That's also rough, right?
Mm-hmm.
But just like, come in, checkbook, entice. Oh yeah, education is important. He was saying shit like that as I'm like kind of doing the door demo inside the house, and then drops that line and slams the door, and I'm like, no way, like. It's almost like there was an artistic way of doing this. Like, you know what? I don't even mad. That was crazy. Anyway, okay. I digest. Thank you, Nick Taverdi, for that line.
Okay.
Okay. So sorry, back to your first store. So you're selling in South New Hampshire, and this is your first day. I derailed us, but thank you for hanging on there.
Right. Yeah. So my first day, went to the Sunday meeting. Again, we talked about, hey, where's everybody? In fact, that's how I got to live with Matt, because Matt, at that point, had already been out there for 4 weeks. Fortunately, one of his roommates quit, so I had a place to live.
Nice.
I could live with Matt. And they gave me, and it's funny, Matt's like, well, here's the territory that we gave him, but he quit after 2 days. So, like, whatever. Sidebar, and the best, like when I went to do deliver, you know how sometimes when people are early champions, you got to deliver books for those. Back in the day, anyway, you had to deliver books for those kids.
Yeah, because they were in your turf.
He quit after 2 days. He had like 4 or 5 customers, and he quit,
which is nuts.
Like just couldn't handle it. Like it was like he thought. I mean, that goes to show you like the mindset of like he thought he was an absolute failure, and he was probably doing better. I mean, again, it's 2 days. I mean, what are you doing? Like,
and it's I'm your first 2 days.
First 2 days, yeah. I guarantee he sold more in those 2 days than 90% of the other rookies. And
yeah. That's on pace to break the record.
And he could not handle it. He was just like, I'm terrible at this. I suck. And he left.
Wow.
And so that kind of became a running joke where Matt would be like, hey, did you find the off schedule spots? Where he would make jokes about that. Where he'd be sitting in his car. And I'm like, yeah, I'm trying to go to the houses. I wasn't looking for the off schedule spots, but I can imagine. So anyway, my first day, the best, by the way, right? So Matt, I remember at the Sunday meeting, we're talking about it. He's piping up, you get your map and you're figuring out, and Matt's looking at the map and he's like, all right, I want you to start here. That's the play. And of course you're like, Matt must have some like,
yeah,
Matt's this incredible bookseller. He's got this wisdom that he's dropping on me. Like, oh yeah, start here. This is the spot. He has no freaking idea. Like, right? Like he's got no
probably knows that's a barn. Like,
yeah. Like, yeah, you show up and you're like, this is a field, Matt. What are you talking about? So
Roy's Auto Muffler and Drag Shop.
I mean, that's what Matt said to start. I guess I got to go in.
Are you the dad of the house?
I will say that the first house I went to is interesting, but it sounds more dramatic than it is. But I remember it being very odd. It's kind of like the Joni Bickney's has her story of like going to like first door, like really wild. I went to the first house, 7:59 on schedule, the whole bit, knocked on my first door. And I could hear them inside and they were moving. And then a woman came to the door kind of slowly, but she answered. I turned side profile, do my approach. And she's just really quiet and she's listening to me. And then she proceeds to tell me that this isn't that funny, but like she proceeds to tell me that 20 minutes earlier, she had gotten a call that her father had just passed away. And that she's got to deal with, she's got to deal with that and everything. And I'm just like,
holy shit.
It's like one of those moments where you're like, this is the first door. I'm trying so hard to like remember what I'm supposed to say. And then this very human moment is coming at you. And you just kind of don't know what to do. And so, of course, I'm just like, oh my God, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so terribly sorry, of course. Like, and I just, and I went, but I remember that was my first door and thinking, well, yeah, we didn't cover that at sales school.
Dude, that is not on the objections list.
No, like I was like, yeah, you're flipping through the book. Like,
wait a minute.
Wasn't on here.
Not interested. Kids get straight A's.
Yeah, my dad just died and someone called to tell me 20 minutes ago. So anyway, that was my first door that I went to, or the first door where somebody answered anyway. And then the rest of the day, most of the rest of that first day, I don't really remember. I do remember being wildly lost. No freaking idea, right? Like where was this? Like,
This is why I like asking about the first, because no matter how everyone else did after the first summer, everybody
yeah.
has this first like
Oh
3-4
man.
days where you're
I,
like,
I
I don't know
definitely
what I'm doing, dude.
I definitely knocked on I knocked on the same house like a couple more than once, like that whole bit. It's like your maps are terrible. You can't read any of them. You're like,
And
what?
this is back when you used to have maps,
Oh yeah,
because
we drew them. Oh yeah, I
yeah,
drew them.
kids have iPads now. They don't
Yeah,
know. They don't know.
you had
They
to
don't
mark. Yeah,
know.
you had to mark green, yellow, whatever. And then of course you get into a neighborhood where they all basically look the same. You're screwed.
You're like
You're just like,
tan,
what?
tan, tan,
Tan.
tan,
Yeah.
tan, blue, tan,
Ah,
tan. You're like,
yeah.
jeez.
So I definitely not the
Oh,
same, but I
bro.
definitely like on multiple occasions. I think that first day, I knocked on the same house and I had some of the same mom answer. She's like, "You were already here," and I'm like, "Oh, I was already here. Yeah, that's cool. Hey, thanks."
If I come back a fifth time, just
Just
come out with a sign. Just put a sign on your door.
you've been
Keith,
here.
you've
Yeah,
been here.
yeah. I also remember. I remember distinctly not getting any pre-approach whatsoever. And the only thing I remember very distinctly, like being in my car, going to a house and being like, I don't care whether these people sit down with me. I don't care whether they buy. I don't care about anything, but I'm gonna ask for like I had to like psych myself. I'm like, I'm asking for pre-approach. This is terrible.
Because you would remember it once you go back to your car. You're like,
Yeah, because it was a
okay,
whole.
I looked her in the eye and I talk
Yeah,
slow.
yeah.
You look around. You look at your
Where?
map.
Yeah,
Shit.
yeah. No idea. Yeah, where am I headed exactly? Oh my god. So I remember that very distinctly. Just like it's
Oh
like you get that
man.
inner monologue where you're like, ask for pre-approach, ask for pre-approach, ask for pre-approach. Like that was the only thing I cared
Yeah.
about.
Oh, it's so good.
So I remember
So
that
good.
feeling very, very well. But the best story that I have for my first day, it was actually really, really impactful and it set me up incredibly well. So I was really coachable. And again, I'm living with Matt. And so that helps a lot, right? I've got a lot of built in trust. I'm living with
Hard to
Matt.
fail.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you got to go out and do it. But like there was that built in, hey, I know this guy, he's done really well at this. Like I had total trust and belief that what he's
Yeah.
telling me to do is what I should do. Like I just had no reason not to. Right. And so I was super coachable and I was doing what they said. I had started on time and I'm doing my thing. I'm trying to work my goal period. I'm getting my demos. And I hadn't sold anything all day, which I wasn't bummed by because like they'd said like, hey, 2 a day on average. Like it's going to, just focus on 30 demos. And I was really focused on that. And so anyway, long story short, kind of late in the day, it's like gravy time. It's probably like 7 o'clock at night. And I knock on a door and I get in. And I remember distinctly, they were like doing the floors, like they were recarpeting or reflooring the house. So they had like boards that were like set on top of like paint cans, kind of like a crisscross going from the front door to the back of the house where the dining room was, because they're reflooring the whole thing. And so I remember doing my approach. A dad lets me in. We walk on these boards with my book bag and we get back there and doing my sit down, going great, and showing them the VL. They got young kids and they're into it. And they're like, and I close them and they say, yeah, will you take a credit card, right? And I'm like, first off, I'm like, this is incredible. You got that feeling of like, it
Yeah.
works. It's my
Oh
first
my
sale. It
gosh.
works.
Dude, we've discussed this feeling so many times on the show, but every time I want to do it again, because it's just
Yeah.
there's this euphoria of your like
Yeah.
an incredulity, or like you just can't believe it, where you're like,
it works.
Finally. Yeah,
Yeah.
like it's amazing. It's
And my first sale was a VL. It wasn't kids' books. Like I'm showing a VL.
Yeah, it's a full set. It's
full set.
It's the meat and potatoes.
Yeah, I'm just showing the 3 books, but they're with me and they're like, yeah, these are cool. I like it. But I had 2 emotions. So they're like, yeah, we'll take it. Yeah, they're like, I don't know, I closed or whatever. And I think they basically said like, hey, will you take a credit card? And I had 2 immediate emotions in that moment. That feeling of just like euphoria of, yes, this works. I can't believe it. Everything they said was true. I can't believe people buy it. I'm going to walk away with a check or whatever. This is incredible. It works. And then oh shit, I have to take a credit card.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know how to do it. So the guy's like, do you take Discover card? And you're doing that thing of like, yeah, we definitely take Discover, and you're like flipping through your bag, trying to figure out, like, you're reading the credit card slip. Because of course back then it was still slips. You had like the thing that you had to swipe.
Yeah.
You had the swiper. and it was like the
Yeah.
old school white one that was huge.
Yeah. Did you have to carry that around?
Oh yeah, it was like in the netting of the
Oh,
bag on the front is where you usually
interesting. So when
kept
I
it.
sold, they had already upgraded to
To the
this.
black ones, the little black ones.
Oh no, they upgraded, the latest in technology in the 80s, but they were able now to borrow Mrs. Jones's phone
Oh
and then
yeah, I think that.
dial
Yeah,
the credit card number into, like, you have to, like, enter the zip code,
yeah,
enter expiration, and you have to, like, dial it using Mrs. Jones's phone because you didn't have your phone.
right.
Now kids have the fucking iPad; they can
Yeah,
just do
yeah,
whatever. But
yeah.
these old school days. That's
Yeah,
awesome,
and
man.
we actually had to deliver books back in the day too. So
Can you believe it?
yeah, now they don't even do that. So anyway, the dad's like, "Well, do you take Discover?" And I'm like, "I have no fucking idea if I take Discover."
I hope so.
I'm like, I pray to God that we take Discover. So I'm like looking at the sheet, I'm trying to figure it out, and then meanwhile, like, and of course you're doing that whole thing where, like, I'm sure they can tell this kid's got no clue what's going on, and
Yeah.
I'm just like reading the thing and trying to figure it out, and I swipe it, and I'm doing the whole thing, and I'm like, I think I got it. Um, and so I figured it out. I don't, if they had covered how to use the credit card machine in sales school, I don't remember because I was lost. But anyway, I figured it out, and I got everything, and I did it right, and it was all good. Like, I did everything right, and I made a sale. And I remember walking out of that house, and you're like, I think I floated to the car after I walked out of that house, right?
Yeah.
Like, somebody just gave me, like, half $150, like they just gave me $150. This is unbelievable. And I just, like, floated to the car. And at that point I probably got out, and it's 7:30. And I was like, man, incredible. And so, and then I remember kept going. But of course, at that point, I'm like, it's a win, right? But then, of course, the thing sets in that you got to work till 9:31 because that's what you said you were going to do. And you got to get 30 demos. And now it's getting dark, right? And it's like 8 o'clock. It's like 8:15. It's definitely dark. And you're like shitting your pants out there. Like,
Yeah,
where
you're
am I going?
knocking on a state where the motto is "live free or die." And
Yeah.
it's like, come knock on my door.
Well, and you don't know, you don't know what you're doing. Your maps suck. Like, you've got no
For all you know, you're
pre-approach.
knocking on an infant store, a grandma or grandpa. You have no clue.
Oh yeah. And I went in, I remember I knocked on the two stories that I will say to finish that day is, one, at about like 8:30 or 8:45 or something like that. I had enough pre-purchase. I knew a house had kids and the lights were on, and I knocked on it. Got totally reamed by the dad. He was super pissed. Just got, like, up and down. And of course, then at that point, I mean, it's whatever. It's like 8:50 or something. And I'm just like, I've just been yelled at basically by this dad. I've already made a sale. And I'm just like, what am I doing? Where am I going? But I said I was going to work till 9:31. And it's like those little moments, right? Like, in that moment, you have to make a decision about what you're going to do. And I remembered that I had met this guy earlier in the day that I think he worked from home. And he had said, hey, my wife works during the day, come back at night. Now, he definitely didn't say come back at 9 o'clock at night, but he said, come back at night. And whatever, like, I talked to the guy. I'm like, well, what do I have to lose? I said I was going to work till then. I got to go. And knocked on the door. He was super cool. He let me right in. We went into the dining room. He didn't even want to be there. Now, again, first day, I didn't know enough to know that I needed to get him involved. But he's like, yeah, it's up to her, whatever she wants to do. And he left to go watch, like, the Red Sox game or whatever. Like, he went to the back.
Yeah.
His wife comes up. We sit down, and I made my second sale to end the day at 9:30 at night.
Wow, that's a great lesson.
She bought another VL, and I walked out of that house at 9:35 at night, and I'd done 30 demos, and I'd worked past 9:31. And it didn't go this way the rest of the time I sold books, but every single day that summer I did 30 demos and I worked past 9:31.
You were a Sammy Southwestern.
Well, definitely the first summer for sure. Like that first, but like I learned that lesson. I was like, it was very much like, oh, this stuff that they told me to do, like, it works. Like, yeah. Cool, do it.
Yeah, and that was
my first day.
I love all of that because there's people that listen to this that literally it's their first summer and they're listening to this, which is an interesting thing, but because we keep it real. And that's not to say, by the way, for listening, that's not to say that your manager's lying to you. I'd be remiss to say that people are coaching you in the way they're coaching you because it works your first summer. You don't try some of the other shit until you've nailed down these principles that Keith is talking about, where it's like, hey, look, I hit my 30 demos every day. I work till 9:30 every day. Those are some of the basics that you have to master before You know, if the book field is chess, you got to know how the pieces move. And so learning about how the pieces move is getting those 30 demos. You're not going to become grandmaster without knowing some of these super basic things and mastering them that then you can tweak later. But you have to get those down. Otherwise,
and we got taught that because you need the reps. I mean, that's just true of anything. I don't care what it is.
Yeah.
Like whether it's books or your any business, any field that you want to go into, like you need reps. So you look at these people that are great at. I mean, Steph Curry has shot how many 3-pointers in his life, right? You need reps.
I hate this because I'm not a fan of Tony Robbins, but I did just watch a Tony Robbins video on Instagram about how he talks about, like, if you do the math, he takes 500 shots a day. So if you like multiply every day towards times 15, he's taken like, he said, according to the Tony Robbins thing, he said something on like 2.5 million shots in his life.
Yeah.
Of a basketball. From there, in the NBA itself, he shot about, I think, 1,500 times or something like that, or he's made 1,500. Something about like the number of baskets that have actually gone in an NBA game is like 0.1%, not 1%, 0.1%. So 0.1%. Wow. Out of all the shots he's ever taken in his life. But that makes him the greatest shooter of all time and the highest 3-point scorer, which means he's failed literally 99, or not failed, but he has shot so many shots that like the percentage of shots he's made versus the ones that didn't count or were just in practice that he's made, whatever, were like 99.9%. Didn't even count. They were for nothing, meaningless from a standpoint of actually getting points. And that is how the greatest shooter of all time exists.
Great principle. I love it take it in another field. If you ever watch comedians in cars getting coffee, I love hearing Jerry Seinfeld talk about process. And he talks about how he writes a joke every day. Every day. Even now, like today, Jerry Seinfeld wrote a joke. He wrote one yesterday. He wrote one the day before, every day. And he admits, like I've seen him do the interviews, talk about it. Most of them are bad. Most of them you will never hear him doing a stand-up set. But why is he able to get up and be able, like, he'll tell you, like, if you want to be a comedian, you got to go be a comedian. You got to get up. You got to do it. You got to suck. You got to fail.
Do the reps.
Do it all over and over and over again. And that's the deal, obviously, with that. And that's the magic of what we get taught with Southwestern is like, yeah, you might say, yeah, it's hard. The schedule's long. It's kind of brutal. You're tired. But there's a reason, like the accelerated learning curve that we got from doing that many reps that early on, like it's hard to beat. Like it's hard to get good at something without just doing it a lot.
Yeah. And you don't get to that ramp up curve until you eat the asymptote at the bottom, right? Like if it's an exponential curve, like you don't get to the exponential part of it of growth until you ate shit for that, that pretty much flat line until it curves up. But that you have to eat that, that's how it works. Did you know I do stand up? Are you mentioning Jerry Seinfeld? Oh,
no, I just reference that because I think sometimes people look at entertainers and they think, oh, that's magic. Like what that person does is like magical. They get up on a stage.
Yeah.
It's a job. Like they go
or they were naturally funny, and it's like,
which is sort of true. Like there are people that are naturally funny, but the people that do it for a living, that do it professionally, it is work. They take their reps, they get up and they do it over and over. And again, to Jerry, so many of the jokes that he writes never get heard in front of an audience, but he's writing jokes every day.
Right.
And many people would consider Seinfeld to be one of the greatest comedians of all time.
Yeah.
And he's still grinding. He's still grinding,
It's funny that you say that because the parallels between stand-up and the book field are pretty similar from the standpoint of it takes ball. I mean, I guess let's just say genitals for the women out there. It takes either ovaries or balls to like to knock on a door of a stranger's house and within 20 minutes have them hand you a check for any sort of product, regardless if it's books or whatever. It takes something inside of you. That's I think that's what makes any door-to-door person special. But like in the same way, it's like to do stand-up, it's like I think I'm funny enough to go in front of 100 people and hopefully tell this joke that makes them at least 50% of them laugh. It's the same principle, right? And you're right. The only way to do it is to go do it. It's not like stand-up is different than like a musician where like we can practice in our garage until we get really good and then we can go perform this. No. To be a professional comedian, to practice to be a professional comedian, you have to go in front of a crowd and just try the material. You don't know how it's going to land until you do it in front of an audience. So like the practice is the doing it, which is kind of what the book field is. You can do all this stuff at sales school, and it does help. Not that it doesn't, but it's but there's a reason why your first day you're lost and your first 3 weeks you're lost, because even though you did all this training in sales school, which did help, and you did, it's still not anything compared to what the actual experience of just go do it, fail forward, good luck. It's the same in the same way. And that's what the book field was,
Yep. But going back, I think the reason I brought up the Seinfeld comparison is going back to our conversation from earlier. That's, I think, what again, with your wife's definition, one of the things that makes him great. Seinfeld doesn't have to prove anything to anybody.
Right.
And he writes a joke every day.
Yeah.
He still does it. He's still doing it.
That's how you become great. Is you just do it. Do it. Yeah. Wow. Cheers to that, sir.
Yeah.
I'm having a blast. I don't know about you. Maybe you're like,
yeah,
oh, fuck this guy. But
I said that before. I would never say that to your face.
Fair enough. I mean, that's okay. Just say it to my back. It's all good.
Yeah. So anyway, that was my first day. Yeah, I mean, I had a blast. I had a blast that first day. I had a pretty good first week, and then kind of the rest was history. Like I said, I was really on schedule my first summer. Was never. I was definitely that kid where it's like I didn't even realize that people. Maybe I kind of knew because like Matt's on, but like I don't think I really knew that people were off schedule. Like I didn't really think. I was just kind of doing my thing. I didn't even think about that. I was like,
the Force organization did a good job of training people that way. Where I mean, it wasn't until my second summer when I was a manager and you kind of got let into the manager world of like, okay, what happens if this person gets off schedule? That I was like, wait,
what?
People don't work? Like I didn't know that was a thing until my second summer. So I get that too. Yeah. Now, okay, so you live with Matt, so this would be a good place to insert. Like, I want to hear about the rest of your summer too, but let's just go into this because we hinted at this earlier. But what was it like working with Matt to see? Because you were working with him, you lived with him, not during his first summer, but this would have been his second summer where he's hit 10,000 units and he's coming back for the first time. So, I mean, for context, he was the number one first year on his side of the pond, which at the time Southwestern had two divisions. It was a power and education division. Dustin Hillis's first summer was the same as Matt's. Yeah, Dustin was the overall number one first year, but Matt was number two technically, but number one in the one division where they still counted it that way. So he was technically number one as well. Yeah, skips the summer. Dustin comes back, sells 10,000 units. So this is back in the day where Matt had come back. This would have been the record had been broken, but Matt was still like this, like really well scripted person. What was that like during the time of his prime?
It was wild. I mean, if we're going to talk about, I know you ask about HQs and some, I've got some things to say about HQs as well. I was terrible at finding HQs. Like I sucked at. I always remember hearing about people would get like this mansion that they were living in and they had the whole basement, and I had some like closet in like a chain smoker's house.
Harry Potter would have looked at it and been like, oh, nice.
Yeah, Nobby had bigger headquarters than I did for sure. Yeah, it was, my HQs were rough, but I would say probably my favorite HQ, and I loved all of them for different reasons because I liked a lot of the people that I lived with, but my first one was, we lived with Dan Roloff, who, God rest, unfortunately he's passed away since, but I loved, he was such a great guy. Dan sold books with Michigan State, but yeah, cheers to Dan. Dan was awesome. Dan was a single guy living in Merrimack, New Hampshire. He had a condo. I think he was an accountant. He had sold books at Michigan State for a couple of summers. Hadn't sold like a ton, but he worked in Barrett Ward's organization, and he was really positive about his experience, and he was happy to host us. Matt lived with him back-to-back summers, so I lived with him the first summer. Matt, and it was me, Matt, and Mark Siriaco all lived together, and it was such a fun HQ. We had a blast. Dan, we're living with like a guy who's in his late 20s. He didn't give a shit. We were like, Dan was such a bachelor pad. He didn't even have furniture on the upper level of his place. Like,
perfect
HQ. The rooms are empty. Like he had this condo, and he's just like, yeah, you guys can just stay up here. There was nothing, like not a stick of furniture up there. And so we just had empty rooms to lay air mattresses on. It was perfect for an HQ, right? He didn't care at all. Ideal. He'd always be awake when we got back, and he'd be like talking to us, and he'd always be like drinking Baileys when we got back from work. He was so great. I love Dan so much. So that made it a great HQ. We ate. This is Matt's fault. You want to talk about breakfast? We ate at Dunkin' Donuts every day that first
You
summer.
have to.
I
My second
mean,
summer when I sold in that in Haverhill, that was. I mean, there was no places open early enough, and Dunkin'
but
is
it's
just
not a
perfect.
real. But it's not a real. Like
No.
I liked it, but I didn't know any differently. I mean, when they talk about, oh yeah, find a cool diner and like meet
Yeah.
some locals.
Yeah.
No, we
No,
were eating
it's
at
not. Yeah.
Dunkin'. We're eating the sausage, egg, and
The
cheese
mom and
croissants
pop
every
shop.
morning. Yeah, no. Sausage, egg, and cheese that have been like sitting out for God knows how long. You've got like that bomb in your stomach, like at mid morning.
You're already hungry by the time you get to the HQ because there's no real nutritional value to anything you ate. Yeah.
That's like a story from my first summer, and so I'll say other things about so first in my first actually so first day I just told you about. My second day was when I was supposed to go follow Matt, which was great for me because it was great. I got to go out for a first day and kind of do my thing, and then second day I'm going to go follow Atchison, see how the master does it, right? And I go out and I roll out with Matt that second day. I'm super excited. I'm going to see Matt. He's this top dog seller, and we get out there and we're rolling along, and we kind of working for an hour, and he starts like kind of like doubling over and feeling ill. And he's starting to talk about, he's like talking about how he can't see that well, like his vision is blurry or something. And I'm just like, what is going on with Matt? Now, bear in mind that Matt's diet is absolute shit. He's eating like honey buns and Mountain Dew for breakfast, basically. I'm sure he's like on some crazy sugar high, like nutrition, not nutritionist approved. So anyway, he's having this like kind of like medical episode a little bit, and he's kind of like his eyes are wide and he's kind of panicking a little bit, and I don't know what to do. Like I'm there to follow him for the day, and it gets to the point where I'm just like, Matt, like you're not well, man. Like you gotta, like, we can't keep going. I'm still like second day, like just trying to be like a normal human. I'm not totally indoctrinated yet. I'm like, you're not well. You need to go to urgent care. Like I'm like, screw your schedule, man. Like we gotta get you to see a doctor. It's yeah,
You might die.
you might die. Yeah, I don't know. So anyway, I finally convince him that that's the right course of action, and so I drive his car because he's like telling me how he's like not seeing, his like vision's blurry and he's not feeling well. And so I'm driving his car back from his turf back to our HQ. And I kid you not, the whole time, like he's like doubled over, feeling terrible. And he's got his head in his hands and he's just like, oh my God, Yvette's going to kill me. Oh my God, Yvette's going to kill me. Oh my God. He's just like, because not only is he going back, but like I'm with him. And so he's like, basically in his mind, he's like, I'm ruining Keith's summer. I don't know if he said it in that way, but he's like, I'm so sorry. Like I'm ruining your summer. Like that's what he's thinking. Like
Now,
in his mind, like the fact that he's having this medical episode and that he's getting me off schedule. Like this is a disaster that can't
yes.
be recovered from.
So we need to explain for the non-initiated why this is a big deal, because there's a few people that listen to this who didn't sell books. So why is it important that why was he so upset about going back to the HQ?
Because once you leave the HQ, it is blown up. You do not go back to the HQ under any circumstances for any reason.
Ever.
Until
at least not
10
9 p.m.
o'clock. Yeah. Well, you're supposed to work to 9:30. So I guess at least after that. Yeah.
Yeah. Because you never, ever, ever go back to the HQ.
If you go back, you die. Yeah.
You die.
Yeah.
That is death.
It seemed like Matt was dying.
He was going to die anyway. So
he's like flipping out as we're driving back. Like he's beside himself about like, oh my God, like Yvette's going to be, because he's thinking about how he's going to have to talk to Yvette and about how he just screwed up my whole summer because now I'm off schedule. And I remember driving, and the good news is, like, again, you don't know what you don't know at that point. And I'm like, Matt, it's fine. Like, I'll just go to my turf after I drop you off. Like, I worked there yesterday. Like, I know where I left off. It's fine. It's not a big deal. Da-da-da. And it wasn't, like, in my mind, like, and that's exactly what I did. So I drove Matt back. I dropped him off. He's like, you can't go in the HQ. You got to get in your car and you got to go to turf. Like, So like, I pull up to the HQ in his car. My car is sitting there because I'm not using it. Right. So we get out. He's going to get, I don't know if he was to go in and get something maybe, or he was going to go to urgent care. And I get in my car and I just drive the turf, and then I work the rest of the day, and it was totally fine. I mean, like, I just worked the goal periods, and I don't know, I maybe made a sale or whatever, but it was totally fine. It didn't bother me at all. But I still will never forget Matt just like convinced that he had like ruined my life because we had to go back to the HQ. But so that was my first experience following
But we
Matt.
weren't in a cult.
We weren't in a cult. No, it's fine. So that was my first experience following Matt. And then after that, I mean, I followed him a couple of different times. I don't remember anything specific that summer. I don't know that I remember a lot about. Like I said, I just remember him being. I mean, his names were unbelievable because, of course, he's hitting more like every week. So he'd sit down with people. I mean, and he's just like pages of names. He's just like, he'd go through it. He's just like, how do you know well, he's like, oh, what, it's the whole, what grade are you in? Oh, do you know any of these 48 kids that are in your class?
Yeah,
that all
regardless of what grade they say.
Yeah, that all bought these books. Like his names were unbelievable. Like he just sat down with people. He sat down with people a ton. He worked hard. He ran between every door. He was really good about. Matt was really good at making it fun. Like you had fun when you followed Matt. Like he'd be cracking jokes and we'd be making fun of the people that we just talked to, or he'd be making up stories about them. He peed in a lot of bushes, like in between houses. We'd be like, sorry to call Matt out, but whatever, Matt knows. Like we'd be like that was one thing I distinctly remember is we worked a lot of country, but like I remember we're like in a cul-de-sac and there's like houses surrounding us, and Matt's like, I gotta take a leak. And he started peeing in a bush
in the middle of the cul-de-sac.
And I'm looking around like someone could definitely see us. Like, but Matt's just like, I gotta take a leak. He just peed in the middle of the cul-de-sac. But yeah, no, he was just great at sitting down with people and connecting with people, and yeah, and it was just it always just felt very like effortless,
There's something about the way when he talks, you're just like, I'm gonna listen to what you have to say. I don't know what that is. I don't know how to even call that, but he has whatever that X factor of someone who can do that.
Well, I'm
gonna listen.
Something that sticks with me too is I always remember I liked the self-talk that he would use. His self-talk was very much centered around one thing he would say is I'm not putting pressure on myself. I'm putting pressure on the system and not on myself. Like he was very much about that. Like he was very much about like, put the pressure on the system. Success is doing my best. Like I'm just out here to show the books 30 times. Like he was he had self-talk that was very just like system. It was about the system and just working and just doing the thing. And yeah. And I don't know. Following Matt was always a blast. I don't know if I remember any.
No, that's still pretty legendary.
Yeah, it was fun. Every time you followed him, it was fun.
So walk me through 5 summers. Where were the 5 places or states that you sold in? Obviously, always New England because we always went to so you went to New Hampshire.
Mm-hmm. Southern New Hampshire first summer. Second summer, I lived in Western New Hampshire, but I sold across the border in Vermont.
Lebanon,
yeah.
Yeah.
I lived in Lebanon and I sold in White River Junction.
Junction. Yeah. Oh,
and then
I found that place tough. Well, I had it first year. So I lived in my first summer. We were supposed to have an HQ in Lebanon. We couldn't find one, so we were staying in hotels. That was kind of tough. But the first year that I had in White River Junction, couldn't get off the ground and spread out. It's really spread out.
It is really spread out. It's really country. There's parts there's like the town, and then you've got like legit farms and just woods and mile-long driveway.
20 minutes before each house.
My car got beat to shit that summer. I mean, it's like dirt roads at this 40-degree angle.
And people think like when people from like Nebraska, when you think of country, you're thinking like anybody in the Midwest, you're thinking like super flat, right? Country. No. This was like mountainous, really weird woods. Yeah.
Long driveways. You're getting pre-approach estimate like, hey, that next mailbox, it's that type of stuff.
7 miles down the whatever.
Yeah. So it was a lot of that. But yeah, so Lebanon, and then I worked in Vermont that whole summer, and that's where I hit. I love that summer. I have stuff I could share about that summer. That was probably overall, I would say my second summer was probably my favorite summer. I hit Mort that summer for the first time.
Wow, that's a big deal.
Like toward the end of the summer, that was my best. That was my best week. My best week I ever had was in north of White River Junction. And then my third summer, I was in Connecticut, also a great summer. Loved being in Connecticut.
Yes.
I lived in Old Lyme, Connecticut, right down by the Long Island Sound. It was gorgeous. We would drive every morning. We would drive down the interstate to the next town over where our breakfast spot was, and the sun would be like coming up over the Sound, and it was just absolutely gorgeous. And then we go eat at this Greek diner that was awesome, and had a blast. My third summer in Connecticut. Fourth summer, I was in Haverhill. We lived in a total shithole.
This is 2008. This is
Oh
5 years
my
before I got there.
Yeah, 2008. I lived in Haverhill. We lived like right by the border. We lived in Haverhill, like all the way up by the New Hampshire border, almost.
Same.
Yeah, like
Merrimack was 5 houses down
oh
from
yeah, like super close.
on the very furthest west. I mean, it was like I think it was actually called the Haverhill River. I don't know what river runs there on the
Hmm.
border of eastern Haverhill. Because if you crossed that river, you were in a different town.
Hmm.
But I saw like the northeastern corner of Haverhill, which was like I could literally kick a ball to Merrimack, which
Yeah.
is right there.
Hmm.
Yeah. Ah, so cool.
Well, you'd always drive across the border because they had no sales tax, so that's where you'd go to
Yeah,
shop.
that's we did groceries and yeah on the other end
Mhm.
for sure. Yeah,
Yep. So yeah, so Haverhill was where I lived my fourth summer, and then my last summer I was in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania. Yeah,
Hmm.
and I sold in Wilkes-Barre near that Wilkes-Barre. We had very similar locations, sir.
Yeah,
That's
I
so
had a great.
cool.
My last summer was super. I really enjoyed my last summer too. It was super fun. Yeah, I had
Yeah,
a really good
Wilkes-Barre was
time
cool.
in Pennsylvania. Yeah, Wilkes-Barre was good. Well, the town was kind of crummy. I mean, a lot of those old like mill towns or river towns, like Haverhill's like that. Like Haverhill, but like their heyday was a while ago. You know,
Yeah,
and that's
yeah.
the tough part about a
And
lot of those towns.
I lived in Honesdale and Emmaus, but I followed Kyle in Wilkes-Barre. One of my buddies, one of the guys who sold it, I followed him, and then I sold in Honesdale. So it was a bit of a jaunt over. But I remember being in Wilkes-Barre and being like, whoa. We had Sunday meetings in Wilkes-Barre and stuff like that, so I was in that area.
Yeah.
That's so cool, man. Okay, so walk me through some. I know you have some stories written down, so I want to give you a chance to kind of tell some of those. What I will say is we'll go through these stories, and then whatever tangential things come up out of those. But then we'll go through some rapid fire questions, and then save your like best one or two for the ponytails. That's usually where we have like the showstopper story on there. So if any of those include that, I would say
Yeah, I'll tell. Yeah, I can rapid fire through some of these. Yeah, I've got a good ponytail that's kind of a lesson type story that I learned my
yeah.
first summer. We'll do
Love
that one
that.
last.
Love that. But I mean, anything that you got Sizzler story, or then you almost got
Oh my
arrested, dog
gosh.
bites.
Oh my
This is a
gosh.
good time to throw those in there. So let's just go through your list and see what you got.
Let's hit some blue light special stories. I love these. So
Oh,
my
a
first
Blue Light
let's
Award,
yeah,
New England.
we got to talk about blue light. So
Typical.
my first summer, the first time I got the cops called on me, it was like the second week. And this is where, like, here's the other thing. Like, when you're new, like, when you grow up as a white kid from rural Nebraska, like, the the cops can do, like,
They're your friends.
they're their friends. They're there to serve and protect. They're like the arbiters of peace and justice and truth. And, like, you believe everything they do is good. And then you go out and you sell books and you interact with the cops and you're like, oh, like
You guys fucking suck.
you're kind of full of shit. Like, what are you like? What are you talking
The
about?
only difference between you and the people you arrest is the badge, man. You suck.
Yeah, because
Not to label all cops that way, but come on.
I remember and that was the other part is I think you started to learn too that they were always so, and I get it. Like, what a waste of their time to be chasing down some kid that's selling books door to door. Like, they were always so pissed, and I get it. I'm like, do you have nothing better to do in this town than to come in?
No.
And they don't. No.
No, the cops in Boston do. Nobody
Yeah.
calls the cops on you when you're selling like close to Boston. But if
No.
you're in the middle of nowhere, that's the most
Yeah.
action they've seen, and they think this is going to be a legit crime scene.
It is. So I want to run through some blue light stories because I had a couple of fun ones. So the first time I got the cops called on me was probably in Chester, New Hampshire. It was like the second week, and I'm going along and I'm doing well, and I'm making sales. Like, and I'm going well, and I'm starting to figure out the pre-approach thing, and I'm doing my thing. And I remember it was some afternoon, I'm mapping, and a cop rolls up on me, and I slow down, and he pulls me over, and he comes up, and he's super pissed, and he's just like, in a mood. And I don't know what the heck's going on because I'm like, I'm just doing what I've been doing all day, every day. And he came to find out, he told me, he's like, well, a woman just called us, and she said that you knocked on the door and that she didn't answer, and that when she didn't answer, you went into her house and you started talking about it. And I'm like, and I remember just looking at him like, I showed him my book bag because my book bag's behind me, window open, right? So you can pull it out and the whole thing. And I'm like, and I just kind of looking at him like, I don't know what she said, but that's my book bag. Like, those are the books that I'm selling. And I remember being like very like earnest, like kid I probably ticked him off because I'm kind of a smart aleck, but I'm like, I'm trying to sell books to these families. I bet breaking into people's houses is a pretty bad strategy for selling books.
Are you a Lipperman boy?
Yeah.
No.
Well, and I remember too, like
Cuffs.
again, white kid in New Hampshire, like he wasn't cuffing me, like it was
Oh,
like,
you and I
like
had different experiences
yeah, it was we
in
had different
these rich
experiences.
neighborhoods of New England.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm sure I believe that to be true. So anyway, so I'm sitting there, like I'm telling him, I'm like, I'm just selling books, man. Here's like I had some names at that point. I'm like, I showed my names list. I'm like, these are people that have bought from me. I don't know what to tell you. And he's all ticked, and I'm like, yeah, I'm trying to sell these. Why would I break into somebody's house? That makes no sense. And so he goes back to the car. It's taken a while, and I'm bored. We're on schedule, and we're like, we're so wired up and amped up. And I remember at one point, like I'm just sitting there in my car, and I didn't think about it. I don't think I'd been pulled over that many times in my life at that point for speeding, even whatever. And I'm just bored. It's the middle of the day. I'm not doing it. And so I got out of my car at one point.
Oh
I,
shit.
I got out of the car because I'm just bored sitting there. Like he's taking forever back there. And I remember getting out of the car and wasn't doing anything. I just got out because it was hot. And I was just leaning against my car. And that was not the right thing to do. He like got on the bullhorn. He's like, get back in your car. He was so mad. He's like, get back in your car. Da, da, da. I'm like, okay, man, chill out. And so again, I just sat there and waited. And eventually, I don't even know what happened, but eventually he's like, okay, da, 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 and left. And I never heard from him again until later that summer. This goes to your point about do they have anything to do? So fast forward like way toward the end of the summer. It's probably one of the second or third last weeks of the summer. I went to this dude's house, did a door demo. Nice guy, didn't buy, or maybe sat down, didn't buy from me. And I went to back out, and the driveway was curved a little bit. And the curve was such that the mailbox sat here, and that you had to turn to avoid the mailbox. And I did
Jesus.
not turn. And I backed. And it was like, again, it was
Oh
those
no.
nice neighborhoods. So he had a granite pole for a mailbox. And I backed right into that granite pole of a mailbox, and it put a nice line in the bumper of my Honda Accord, but whatever, it wasn't that big a deal. But it like kind of unearthed, didn't hurt the mailbox any because it's granite, but it like unearthed it. It like tipped it out of the ground kind of. Fortunately, the dude was actually really cool. Like he was an insurance salesman, and so he's like, I sell insurance. It's fine. It's covered. It's not a big deal. He's like, but I do need to call the cops just so I can file a report and I can claim it on my insurance. But he was as cool as he could have been about it. I think he respected the game of like I'm out here selling
Yeah.
stuff. Like
Gotta
he just
love those dudes.
you do like
Yeah.
like he didn't buy from me, but he totally was cool and respected the game and all that. And so anyway, I'm like, okay, get it. Hey, so super apologetic. And so we wait. A cop shows up. So he comes to make the report, and he's kind of doing his thing, talking to the guy, and the guy's really cool about it. He's not mad. And then he comes to talk to me, and he's like, I've been looking for you for a month.
Oh shit. Oh no.
apparently, because again, this is like toward the end of the summer. Apparently, on the 4th of, we work on the 4th of July. I've been working on, and apparently, I think I had gotten called in on like multiple times for working on the 4th of July. Like, God forbid,
New England don't do it the same way. It's
I don't know.
how
So
rude.
apparently, several people were upset that I knocked on the door on the 4th, and they had called the cops. And mind you, at this point, it's like the first week of August, or like it's like a month later. And he's like, I've been looking for you for a month. And I didn't say this, but I remember thinking, where are you looking, man? I'm here all day, every day with a car with Nebraska plates. I'm not that hard to find. Like,
Sounds not that big.
like, I'm like, this is a sleepy town. Like, I'm the traffic. Like, what are you talking about? So he's all pissed. I just remember like that was what was rolling in my head. I'm like, don't say that. Don't say that. Like, I was like this Joker. Like, I've been looking for you for a month. I'm like, yeah, okay, man, cool. Like, how hard you've been looking like at the Dunkin', I think.
Yeah. Love those stories, dude.
So anyway, so that was I love that story. And then the other cop, and then the other blue light I'll tell is I think it was my third summer. Tom Scott was following me, and I remember, again, by this point, it's my third summer, and so I'm getting more smart alecky with the blue light specials, right? You get more courage.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
Because you
And
know that you're fine overall. So it's like
I've got
even if they throw me in jail, I'll call Trey. It'll be good. Like,
well, and we always did it the right way. Like I didn't avoid. Like I'd go get the permit. It's not like I was
yeah,
sneaking around. Like I went and got the permit, or
yeah.
I'd do what they wanted me to do.
Yvette and Grant were very, very adamant about that. That
Yeah,
must be
and
said. They were
unless
good
the,
leaders that way.
unless the permit was like $1 million because they're trying to be jerks about it. But I would always go and like check in and tell them I'm going to be here and get the permit. So anyway, the town I was working in Connecticut didn't really like. It was money. It was a total like bedroom community. It was all that like rural, wealthy, but it really wasn't a town in the sense that there was no like downtown. It was just all neighborhoods and houses with money. And so they didn't really have a cop. They had like a state patrolman that was like assigned to the area because like no crime happened in this town. Like,
Yeah.
I was the crime. Like the guy selling books door to door was like the biggest crime that was happening, right? And so anyway, long story short, I remember it was a Saturday morning. Tom Scott was following me. Shout out to Tom. He was my roommate. And it's like week 3 or 4. I think it's like week 4 on a Saturday. And we're going out and we're rolling. I'm having a good week. I think I'd already hit chairman's at this point. Like I'm rolling that week. My names are going. I'm crushing it in this town. I think I hit chairman's like 3 out of the first 4 weeks of that summer in
Just
that town.
cranking.
I'm loving this town. My name's list is rolling. I'm killing it. And I get pulled. I think I'd been pulled over once before, and he'd kind of like read me the riot act a little bit, but whatever. This Saturday morning, he rolls up on me, and he's pissed. And I don't know what happened. It's the whole thing that they roll up and they're like, "We've gotten so many calls." I'm like, "You've probably gotten like 2 calls. Like, give me a freaking break. Like, so many
People
calls."
love me in this town, bro. You're bullshitting.
So that's the thing. He's like, "We've gotten so many calls about how you're being rude and da da da." And I'm like, "Okay, man, whatever." And then he's like, "You're done." He's like, "You're out of here. You're kicked out." And at this point, I'm gonna get my money's worth because if you're kicking me out of the town, like I'm killing it here. And so he's giving me he's reading me the riot act, and he's like, "I don't want to see you in this town again. You got to get out of here." Da da da. And I remember just kind of like smirking and looking at him, and I'm like, "Okay, I hear where you're coming from, officer." Well, the problem is, and I pull out my names list. The problem is all these people, sheet. I'm just showing them all. Like all these people have bought books from me, and they're all expecting me to come back later in the summer and deliver them their books. So do I need to call them, or do you want to call all of them and tell them how I can't come back and deliver the books that they've paid for? He was so pissed.
Yeah, he'd be like mad. Dude.
Yeah, but I was right.
These
I'm
guys are
like,
the sheriffs in town. They have such authority, or they think that they have.
yeah.
It's crazy.
He's like, he's like, and so he gave me the whole, yeah. And so he just kind of like, it sat with him for a minute. He steamed, and then he's like, "Fine, you can come back and you can deliver the books, but I don't want to hear about you going around and selling anymore." Da, 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 da. And I'm like, "Okay, man, cool." The end of that story is we left, and then we went and sold 100 units cold in the next town over.
Get
So.
it? Let's go.
Yeah,
And then they bought.
and then they
Let's
bought.
go.
Yeah. So that was fun, but I got to like give that guy a hard time. I also had another time where a cop truck wanted to like take my names list. I'm like, "What? You're trying to take my property? What are you doing, man? This is my property. You can't take my names list."
Yeah.
What are you doing? Which reminds me of like the Ty Christensen story of he was wearing the shirt of the town he was working in, and the cops are like, "You can't wear that shirt. People think we were with the school." And he's like, "You're gonna tell me what shirt I can wear in America?"
Dude, we need to get Ty on this show. Is what we need to do.
Oh man, you'll have some beers there. He's got some stories, but yeah,
Dude.
the cops are like, because he's wearing like the high school like mask, shirt.
Yeah, you would collect them. Yeah,
he'd like show up at the door. Hey, he's like, "Well, people think you're with the school." He's like, "That's not my problem. I can't help what people think. I'm just wearing a shirt and I'm working." And I'm doing my thing.
that's hilarious.
You can't. I'm like, this is freedom of expression. You can't tell me what shirt I can wear or can't wear. Yeah. So anyway,
That's so good. Oh,
so anyway, those are some of my blue light stories. But a couple other things like second summer. The second summer was probably my favorite. We lived like from an HQ standpoint, it wasn't my favorite HQ because Dan was probably my favorite because we had an actual host family, but I sucked at getting HQs. I was always good once the summer got going, but like finding HQs, there's something about it that I just struggled to do. Matt had to find it for us. Basically what we got set up was the Catholic Church in Lebanon, one of them, had an office that was like an old house, like that they converted into an office for the church next door. And Matt had talked to him, like maybe his mom called the priest. I don't know. Basically, they let us live in the upstairs of this house converted to an office because it was a house. It had a bathroom, shower, which is kind of weird because we're living in an office. But the best part was that on Saturday nights, it was like the hangout because the CYO room for the church was the basement of this house. So there were like couches and a pool table and ping pong and like big screen TV. And so I would tell people like, so Saturday nights, it would be like, hey, wherever the Sunday meeting was the next day, I'd tell the other HQs, come down, sleep in the basement, and I'd get pizza and like beer for the guys or whatever. And we'd watch Tommy Boy or whatever. That was so super fun.
Dude,
but it blasted
Saturday nights in the book field were a different kind of hangout.
The pizza never tastes quite as good as when you finished a week.
Oh my God. We haven't talked about that enough on this podcast, and we need to.
And the pizza in New England is so incredible.
Good. So good.
Incredible.
So good. It is. I know pizza comes from Italy, but if there was a different HQ for pizza making, bro, the amount of Italians live in New England is nuts because of the migration of the 1900s. And like, that is, I will say this now because I've never got a chance to say this. I live in Portland, and God bless Portland with their amazing
coffee's good.
The coffee's good. It's one of the foodiest cities in America. It's been
beer's good.
Like the diversity. Beer. This is locally brewed.
Yeah.
Shout out.
Yeah.
And the pizza's good. But I'm not trying to shit on where I live, but not anywhere close have I ate anything as good as the pizza in New England. In Haverhill, Massachusetts, I'm telling you, Andino's Pizza, the slices were bigger than our faces. And we'd go there on Saturday nights, and man, it doesn't matter how good of a week or bad week you have. The Saturday night pizza at the end of the week, especially after a week that you busted it, regardless of how much you sold. I've had pizza that tasted better on weeks I didn't sell that much, but I busted it to like earn that pizza at the end of the. Oh, dude. Yeah. And you're with your roommates, and they've all been going through the same thing. So that's like the only connection to like normalcy that you have is that two to three other people are also eating shit all week. Even if they sold a lot of books, you just have been dealing with nastiness.
Especially that summer. One of the stories from that summer I was going to share is, so that HQ ruled because we had that CYO room. I lived with Brad Schmidt and Kyle Skogel in that summer. And shout out to those guys. They both did awesome. Both of them, I think, finished in the top 20 as first years that year. It was so fun. We crushed it that summer. But Schmidt, God love him, for as well as he did, I'm not sure if he made a nickel that summer because his car had so many problems. Oh, my God. I felt so bad. And, when you're not 25, you can't rent a car really. So he had to, he literally it was called Rent-A-Wreck was what it was called. You have to rent. So it's basically piece of shit cars that you could rent when you're not old enough or your credit's so terrible. And so he was driving this hunter green gremlin around for half the summer because he'd have his car in the shop. And I swear to God, I remember this so well. It was so sad. But I remember going out, and he finally his Grand Prix or whatever he drove got fixed up. And I remember we were so excited for him. Oh my gosh, he finally got this thing fixed. It's all good. And then we left from our breakfast spot that morning. And I remember when I rolled in that night and the Rent-A-Wreck was back in the parking lot.
Oh, dude, no.
It was back in the parking lot. And I just remember my head just hit the steering wheel. And I got out and I went in and I'm like, and you're just like, how's your day, man?
What happened?
What happened? It was it died again. Oh, I felt so bad for him because he did really well that summer. He was, like I said, he was a top 20 rookie, and he probably made no money because his car was it was brutal.
He might as well just bought a new car and it would have been cheaper.
Oh, it absolutely would have been cheaper to just buy a new car. It was absolutely brutal. Also that summer, it was flooding. We were getting the basement flooded objection because it was raining so much. I kid you not, you exaggerate, and I maybe now, but it rained at least every day for the first 2 weeks. I remember doing I remember distinctly going out and like Brad Schmidt was following me or Kyle. And I remember like I have this image of them like doing door demos while rain is like coming off the roof, like down the
Yeah,
back
it's
of their
just
chest. I
off the
just
gutter because it's too much water. Yeah,
oh yeah, just like pouring down their back. Like
and it rains in New England. People
oh, it
don't.
rains.
It
Yeah,
rains. It
yeah.
comes. It slaps down.
Oh
Holy
yeah.
moly.
So that
Um.
was yeah.
1 second. Hold. Okay. Unpause. Okay. So those are some Blue Light Award stories. Cool, cool. I love these, by the way,
Mm-hmm.
as I was telling you. Relatability is the ideal
Mm-hmm.
for these episodes.
The other thing I want to say, I don't know, I mentioned HQs a minute ago. Like I wanted to go through a couple of those. Like that second one was awesome because we lived in a church office, which was really weird. The other ones, though, I swear, I had terrible HQs. My third summer wasn't that interesting. We lived with an alumni. He had like an in-law apartment, and again, no furniture. Like it was very weird. I'm like, what are you doing, man? Like it was like he had this big house out in the woods in Connecticut, and then he had this in-law apartment attached to his house with nothing in it. Yeah, I don't know. Like we survived. I don't know what. That's the main thing. My fourth summer in Haverhill. So you mentioned you lived in Haverhill. We lived right by the border, and I remember that summer. Again, we lived in a church office, like next to a Catholic church, because Matt's like, "You suck at this. You can't find an HQ," and so he had to call the church. And I remember they got us set up, and they're like, "Yeah, fine, they can live." The place that we stayed in was this like church office next door to the church. It had no air conditioning,
Oh no.
and so all summer you'd go out and one of my roommates was a walker that summer. So he'd be out biking all day. We'd get back and it was just like balls hot.
85.
Oh my God. Just, yeah, 85 degrees. And you're trying to sleep on an air mattress in this place with like 18 box fans.
That first year didn't feel air conditioning other than Sundays at the grocery store.
Correct.
That's insane.
It was brutal. The other thing I remember about that experience is not only was it the HQ sucked because it wasn't really an HQ, it was just like an empty warehouse space. It felt like but whatever, we could keep our stuff there. And then I remember the pastor, I forget what the interaction was, but on some Sunday I ran into him, and let's just say his name was Steve. And I don't know if it was just a Midwest thing or whatever, but or maybe college professors, but I remember I just referred to him by his first name, and he got really pissed at me that I referred to him as Steve. He's like, Keith, it's Pastor Smith. Like it's Pastor. Like is that like it was like this whole thing, and I was like, oh well, you're a douche. Like I don't know what to tell you, man. I'm like I don't like immediately. I'm like, if you like, your name is Steve, isn't
You call
it?
him Jesus, not Lord Savior. Come on.
Yeah,
I'm
I'm
kidding.
like, did I get your? I was like, I probably looked at him like I was confused. Like, I'm confused. Is your name not Steve? Is that incorrect? But I
How
remember
weird.
that. I remember it being very weird. It's probably the reason why I remember it because it was like bizarre. And then my fifth summer, I swear, I lived in a place. Our fifth summer, we lived in Wilkes-Barre, and it was not great. Again, just a place to keep our stuff. The kitchen, I think, had been under renovation for like a decade. There was like a tarp hanging up in the middle of their house.
When did you start this? 1998?
The Reagan administration. Like we rolled in, the couple smoked like chimney. It was always a bad sign when they like needed the money, you know.
Yeah, when the HQ took you in, not because they wanted to, because they
Right.
needed. Like they
They
were
like
getting more out of you than you were of them.
right. They like kind of needed the money. I'm like, we're paying like $50 a month. Like this isn't. But that was like they.
We're holding your entire life together. I don't know what you're gonna do in August. Like,
Yeah, it was. That HQ was something. The advantage of some of those places is you kind of wanted to go to work. There was no reason to go to the HQ. It was like they sucked. It was
honestly,
go to
yeah,
work.
a little bit of a blessing in that. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
like,
for sure.
it
That was the advantage.
It sucks worse to be home.
Yeah, exactly. It really did, especially that last summer. And I had a really good summer in my last summer, and that was it. Like there was zero, and it was kind of good for the first years because like, hey, you don't want to go back there, guys. Like this place is terrible. Go to work. That. Yeah, this place is terrible. I'm trying to think here. Couple other stories I wanted to hit. Oh, I was gonna say like alumni. You probably have like a meeting alumni in the book field. I don't know. If this
never did.
okay.
Did you?
So yes, I never met an alumni until my third summer in Connecticut. And then interestingly, I met like four that summer. I ran into a bunch for whatever reason that summer. Um,
That's wild, actually.
yeah, it was weird. I don't know. What was funny about it though, and people have maybe talked about this, but there's a certain phenomena that people listening to this can maybe relate to. Whereas, and this is true, I suppose, just in life, when you meet people out there in the world, like when you meet people that sold books, you can like immediately tell how well they did, like within like 20 seconds of starting a conversation with them. So
Yeah.
an example, the first guy I remember I met that summer, I'm just doing my thing, knocked on a door, and the guy came out and he's like, "Oh, are you with Southwest Books?" Immediately when they say Southwest
Southwest
Books,
Books.
you know,
You
like,
early
you,
champion.
yeah, you quit in like 2 weeks. Yeah, exactly. It's like, oh, Southwest. He's like, oh, I sold books for Southwest, and you're like, oh, did you? Cool, man. Like, I bet you killed it, didn't you? Like, what were you like number one in your group?
Yeah.
So he's like, oh yeah, I
That's
sold.
accurate.
He's like, oh, I sold books with Southwest, and then I'm like, okay, I'll entertain this. Oh, cool. How? Tell me about it. How was it? And then this is the next thing that came out of his mouth. I'll never forget it. I think I laughed. I may have laughed at his face. He's like, "Yeah, I sold books in Detroit in the recession of 1978." And I just killed me because it's like immediately you're telling me that you sold books in a recession in Detroit, and so then my immediate reaction was, "Oh, how'd you do?
Yeah.
How was it?" Well, not too good. I went home early. I didn't. Oh, really? Man, can't believe it.
Could have guessed.
So that was what became my experience. I just remember it was really funny meeting people that had done it, because it would be that, like, oh, Southwest, and they tell you, yeah, oh yeah, recession of 78. So that was always the best. Like, you could tell immediately like how well people did based on how they talked about it. And then that was to say the other thing about meeting that summer. Later that summer, I met another alumni that was like cool as hell. I wish I could remember his name, but he was like a surgeon, like crushing it,
Oh,
like
wow.
just absolutely killing. He and his brother had both sold books, and they had both done really, really well. You know, like 20 years earlier, and he was like a surgeon, lived in this huge house, and he was just cool as hell. And he bought books and I had a kid following me, and he gave us ice cream and the whole bit. He was the coolest. It was so fun.
Damn, dude. I
Yeah.
never met an alumni on the book field.
Well, but that's the thing. Like, when you meet an alumni, I think you're imagining, oh, this is going to be this magical experience where they're just going to be so, but then you forget, oh yeah, there's kids that went to do it that didn't finish, or like didn't have a good
Yeah.
experience or whatever.
Those people also, I mean, yeah, they're out there for sure.
But but those people exist too. Yeah.
We ran into some of them on here. I mean,
Yeah.
and honestly, it's interesting because some people don't have a good experience, and that's also
Yeah.
valid. You know what I'm saying?
Sure,
Like,
of course, yeah.
because I understand why they didn't have a good experience, and even though they finished the summer, they didn't like it, and it's like, you know what, that's
Yeah.
fair. It sucked.
It's
I mean,
it's not like it's certainly not the easiest job you can do.
yeah. I
By
mean,
any stretch.
even
No.
even Matt Atchison during his, did you hear his episode? Did you
Yeah.
listen to his?
It was a
Yeah.
while. I mean, it was a while ago. But
There's a point during the episode where he flat out verbatim says, "I hated selling books. I just knew it was hard, and I needed to do it for myself to like grow, but I didn't like the job, and or whatever." And I remember when we were doing the podcast and we heard him say that, I remember thinking like, "Oh, this is the kind of stuff that people don't realize until after they leave, when they go, oh yeah, that was insane that I did that. Completely worth it. Nobody's ever mad at their student manager, even if they hated the experience, you know, the person that recruited them. But like, it's understandable why the people that quit, or even the people that sold to just the one summer who didn't do that well and look back on it like negatively. I'm like, I understand. I mean, I don't feel that way about it because a lot of good things came for me out of it. But when people don't have a good experience, I get it. Especially after doing this for so many episodes, I'm like, I feel it. So
Well,
you run into those people.
especially if you weren't really selling all that much.
Yeah.
I totally get how it's a miserable, because even when you're selling a lot like Matt was, it's
Oh,
hard.
dude, it's hard.
Even
It's
when you're
so
selling a
hard.
lot, it's hard.
It's a
But
hard
if
game.
you're not selling hardly anything, I can totally see how it can be brutal.
Yeah.
I will give Matt credit though. Like, I know that about. I mean, Matt and I are good friends. We've known each other for a long, long time, and I know that about him. But I will give him credit for the fact that even if he says that and that was the case. I never got that vibe. Like, he had a lot of fun too,
Yeah.
though. Like, I never got the sense following him that he was like in agony and miserable. Like,
but that's the lesson,
Yeah.
right? That's the lesson is, even though this sucks, just like the cold shower, it's like, even though this sucks, I'm going to enjoy the fact that it sucks.
Yeah.
And I think that's the key when we were talking about greatness. It's funny that it all kind of ties back in full circle, but like, Michael Jordan didn't want to get up at 5 fucking in the morning to go run up and down a basketball court. Nobody wants to do that.
Any of us. I don't want to work out every day.
Nobody.
No.
But the difference is, people like that learn to find a way, whether it's mental, whether they lie to themselves, who knows? Regardless of why or how they do it, they find a way to tell themselves, this is what I need, and I'm going to enjoy even this shitty part of it.
Yeah.
Because when it all comes back and I got the championship, or in Matt's case, I sell all the books, I'm going to go, oh, that's why I succeeded, because I earned that. And that's not Michael Jordan, regardless of how much talent, Matt Atchison, you, right? No matter how much talent you each had, the nice thing about the book field, and at the same time, I think maybe the worst thing about the book field, is nobody is to blame other than yourself for how you do. Period. Could territory come a factor? Sure. Could your HQ, or like some people get lucky and they never had car problems in their entire 5 summer career or whatever? Sure. There's like some luck. Let's throw 20% of it is luck. The other 80% of it is you. And even the 20% that was luck is how you reacted to how lucky or unlucky you were. Like that. And I think that's the thing that about what we did that was so strange, is that you had to, for you to do well, you had to learn how to deal with the shit in a good way, which comes back to your attitude. But I think that's just an important thing to highlight, is even though Matt said he hated it, it never, like you said, you would have never known, because his attitude was so far beyond how much his hatred of the book field was, that it didn't even matter how much you did or didn't like it. His job was to go out there and kick ass, and then he did.
Yep.
And so did you. That's amazing.
Well, and the thing is, like, even people that are successful still have problems. They just don't. And that's the point that I'm trying to share about that alumni saying, well, man, I sold books in the recession of 1970. Yeah, other kids sold books in the recession of 1970.
So did the number one first year. Yeah.
And that's the point. Like, if you're telling me immediately about the obstacles, I can tell you immediately how you did.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Because I just shared with you, like, that's one of the things that I remember most about that second summer was Brad Schmidt having all those car problems. I also shared the fact that he was a top 20 rookie that first summer. Like, he had so many excuses for why he could have quit or not worked as hard or whatever. And he never, I lived with him that's whole. He was awesome to live with. He never made excuses. He kept a good. I know he was pissed about his car, but he controlled what he can control, and that's the thing that hopefully one of the things that you learn from selling.
And that's a lesson on that. I always, when I was teaching my brother, because I recruited my brother, and his wife, and like one of the biggest things I hope I taught him was that, attitude is really just synonymous with perspective, right? It's not about being positive. It's about how you choose to look at something. So, you could choose to look at it from, oh man, I had a lot of car problems, like the top 21st year. Or you could say, man, he still hit that number, and that's impressive. But the reality is, I mean, he probably would have been number one if he never had the car problems, but that's not what you focus on. Mm-hmm. The focus is he did what he had to do, and he did everything he could do. Mm-hmm. And then if someone did everything they could do, that's greatness in my book. You did what you had to do with what you could do, and there was nothing more you could do. All you can do is all you can do, and you did it. Yep. You rock.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Wow.
Yep.
Damn, Keith. All right. Do you got some more stories, or do we need to go into rapid fire?
We can't. The one story that I have to share that's too good not to tell is it's not even my story, but I have to share it.
This is besides your ponytail.
This is besides my ponytail.
Oh, okay, cool. I was just making sure this wasn't. I'm like, wait, no. If that's
no,
this is okay.
Not that.
Hold on a sec. Okay, go.
Yeah. So, well, maybe I'll tell. Well, the other one's not as much a story, but I'll tell two. The first one I will say is my fourth summer. I had a couple of fun. My fifth summer, I had a couple of fun things happen. I sold a guy, or Well, I didn't end up selling it, but I had a demo, a sit down with a guy that was under indictment and in the news like that whole summer, which was hilarious to me. Living in Wilkes-Barre my last summer, we go to the breakfast spot and there was like a old school newspaper stand, right? And you'd see the headlines on the newspaper. And I remember seeing tangentially, there was this case that was going on in the news. And I was working in Mountaintop, Pennsylvania, which is like right to the east of there. And the guy, basically, long story short, there was some scandal going on where this guy was like I think he was like a county prosecutor, and he was doing something shady where he had like a deal going with someone where he was like shuffling juveniles to like a work camp and getting a kickback from the work camp by like sending kids basically that were in trouble with the law. That was basically the story. So anyway, I'm working in Mountaintop, which is this really nice like suburb, like country, big brick, loved it, great turf. And I was in this neighborhood, and you know how it works. Like, you're talking to people, you get in and sometimes you just get that pre-approach. It's totally unsolicited. They just tell you. And so I'm at a house, and I knew this guy lived in this town, but I had no idea where. And I knock on a door, and I'm talking to a gal, and she's like, "Well, you know who lives at that house, right?" I'm like, "No, I don't." And she's like, "Oh, it's whatever the guy's name was,
yeah.
so and so." And I'm like, and I think I had a rookie follow me that day, and I was like, "Oh, thank you so much." And I got the rest of pre-approach, and as soon as she shut the door, I'm like, "We're going there next."
You're goddamn right. Yeah.
We're going there next.
I love the relatability of your stories. Honestly,
Yeah.
it's because every book person that's hearing the story is going, fuck
yeah, we're going there.
If they don't have kids or whatever, I don't care. We got to knock on this door. The story. I'm going to tell this on the Ponytails podcast one day. We need to go make this story happen.
Yeah, and the unfortunate thing, it was a huge house, right? Because of course he's getting kickbacks.
Sure.
Like he's
all
like
the juveniles he sent.
Yeah,
got to pay for that mortgage.
Yeah, he's skimming money off the top. There really wasn't that much interesting to happen. I went over there. Fortunately, we did get a sit down. Like I got in, huge house, super nice. They had high school kids. I didn't really interact with him. I talked to the mom, and I like said he was there because of course he was. I think he had an ankle bracelet on because he's like in the middle of a trial or whatever. But I remember I'm like demoing her and like getting the kids involved. We're like at their massive island. And unfortunately they did not buy it. That would have been great. But I do remember he was there and he was like kind of walking around and on the phone. And I just thought it was super funny that this
That's
dude's
a name you could not use.
No, exactly. If you sold them, you're like, yeah.
Nobody needs to know you bought. Don't share it. Don't tell your friends.
I'm pretty sure that guy went to jail later that summer. So, but yeah, so that was kind of fun. Went to the guy's house that was indicted. And then another one that happened that last summer is, again, this is the classic, and then they bought. I remember, I always love it when people give you the whole, well, don't go to that house thing, right? You get the pre-approach, don't go
now
to that
we're
house.
Going.
We're immediately going, right? Yeah. As soon as someone says, don't go to that house, it's an immediate, oh, they're next.
To go.
You have
what
to
is
go.
It about us that we have to do?
Well, because you know that they're full of shit. All the reasons why they think that family is weird are all the reasons why they're going to buy from you.
Yeah, because they're ponies. Ponies are weird.
Yeah, that's weird. And that's what these people. It was a hoarder house. So I'm at this house. So picture this. So I'm in Connecticut. It's country, and the house where I got the pre-approach from is like up on this hill. And I'm up on this. They had really nice house. They're up on this hill, and I did a sit down with them, and they didn't buy from me, right, for whatever reason. And then I'm getting pre-approach. And the nice thing is I'm on a hill, which is perfect because I'm like, you're just pointing them out like that one, getting pre-approach. And it was like a movie almost, like they're up on this hill and then down the hill from their house. And I'm sure this family is pissed about this. Was this house where like the siding wasn't really on the house. And I kid you not, the entire lawn was like covered in old air conditioning units.
Yeah, dude. Oh my God. Hoarders are crazy.
There was like old cars and old AC units just covering it. And I remember looking at this place and I'm like, something's going on there. And they're like, and they're giving you don't go to that house. They're weird. And I'm like, thank you so much. Shut the door. Let's go. So I immediately, and of course, this is the best part because the fancy house up above didn't buy from me at all. I go down and this is when you're at a hoarder's house. So I pull in. I can barely get my car into a place off the road because there's so much shit everywhere. But I'm like, I had to like park and then like go out to look at my car and make sure that it was not sticking out into the road, because it's like,
This is one of those stories where you can only relate if you
yeah,
understand, and most book people at least knock on
yeah.
one of these doors.
So I'm like
It's so good.
inching my car between the AC units, right? And I like squeeze out, check to see if it's in. And then I get out. And of course, I shit you not, like all this stuff is stacked. There's a path that's like this wide through, it's like Candyland. I'm
Bro,
like
it looks
going
like that
through,
room of requirement from Harry Potter. You're like, what the fuck is going on in
yeah.
this house? It's
I'm
so wild, dude.
I'm weaving my way through the AC units to the back door. And then I knock on the door. Knock, knock, knock. The door's terrible. It about collapses as I knock on it.
It smells like shit.
It
It smells so bad, dude.
Yeah. I take 3 steps back. But they had a kid. They did have a kid. And that's what I asked the people. I'm like, do they have a kid? They're like, well, they got a kid. And so I take my 3 steps back. My bag's probably sitting on an AC unit, like next to me, right? And then the door opens. Lady answers the door. I turn around, give my approach. This is the best. It's a hoarder house when. I said, do my approach. I'm like, hey, do you have a place to sit down? And she's like, well, not really, but you can come in.
Yep. Yes. If anybody's following you at that point, you'd be like, dude, get ready to take some notes. This is about to be crazy.
So I go in and it's just like magazines stacked like all over.
Plates.
There's just like a path.
Pizza
Like,
boxes, dude.
oh,
It's insanity.
shit everywhere.
Dude, this is the things that people don't tell you that you're going to learn in the book field. Not to interrupt your story, but it's like you learn a lot. And my wife, I would say out of the two of us, my wife is relatively clean for a normal human being.
Okay.
Right? But I'm a clean freak, and I used to not be. And I didn't become a clean freak until I sold books.
Oh,
and I sold in a hoarder's house, and you're like, you're so scarred from it's really like a traumatic experience. I mean, I'm being a little bit dramatic here, but like, dude, if you've never seen a hoarder, you've only heard about them or on TV, it's when you walk into this house, dude, it just changes your life. Like it's a different experience.
Well, I immediately go in, and of course that's the thing. She wasn't kidding. Like, do you have a place to sit down? Not really. They had a couch covered in all God knows what, right?
Yes,
so I remember
smells so bad.
I won't be able to like really if people are just listening audio or even visually, I can't. But like I found like the smallest corner of that couch that I could like lean my butt cheek on, and I'm like, I'm like propped on this corner, leaning, and like there was a kid, and he was probably like in 5th grade or something, and he's sitting there with me. And of course, as I'm looking around, I'm like, these people are definitely gonna buy. They don't say no to anything. Like all the stuff is here.
Yeah.
And they totally did. They absolutely bought. Like I'm sitting there, I do the demo for the kid, and they're like, "Yeah, sounds great." They paid cash.
They pull the cash out. Yes, it's always cash. No hoarder writes you a check.
Yeah, paid cash.
Nothing. They pay, and they pull it out of like the jar of like some
coffee
weird
can. Yeah. God knows how they could find it. There's probably millions of dollars lost in that
the
place.
fact that I could finish that story for you, like you didn't have to say anything. I could have told you what's gonna happen.
They had to go.
Worth every time.
They had to go dig it out of the backyard.
Dude, it's like under a magazine. You're like,
yeah.
wait. I could have sworn I left 100. Oh yeah, and then they like dig out of a freaking Walmart bag that's from 30 years ago.
Yeah, totally. So yeah, it was so classic. I loved it because and they were and I will say they were super nice. They were a really nice family.
Dude, they're the nicest people ever.
Yeah, they were super nice, and that was, and of course the irony of all ironies, and that was always the way it went, and that's why you knew as a book person after you've been doing it for a while, the super well put together people up on the hill did not buy from me, and the people that they couldn't think less of loved their kids so much, and they bought books for me, and they were so kind and generous and just awesome people, and really great lesson. I mean, it smelled and it was weird, and I had to sit on the corner of a thing, but like they didn't love their kids.
Mom and dad might have been related.
Yeah, who knows? Yeah, it was hard to say.
Yeah.
But I do remember, but I walked out of there and I'm like, yeah, I'm never going to forget going to that house. That was something, man. Yeah. So that was a hoarder house. And then so that's that one story. And then another story I had, this one isn't my story, but I heard it at a Sunday meeting from one of the guys in my org, and I'm just going to share it. And, don't let the facts get in the way of a good story, right, Andres? So Yeah. So
That's a write that down as a principle for our
that's a
podcast.
principle. That is, yeah, that's a principle. This story is true as far as I know, because I remember, like, I don't believe Kyle had any reason to lie about it. But there was a kid in our org, Kyle Brannicky, that summer, that it was his second summer. He was a B manager, and I love this so much. So basically, what happened was he was working in Vermont. Again, country, long driveways. You don't know until you get up there what you're dealing with, right? And he goes up this driveway. He'd gotten pre-approached that there's kids up there, right? And so he's driving up there. He's got a rookie that's following him, and he's driving up the long driveway. You know, he doesn't really know if they got, but whatever, we'll find out. Whatever, we'll just go up here. It's the middle of the day, right? He's mapping. He's figured it out, and he pulls up, and he said what happened was he wasn't really, you know, it is like when you're pulling up and you're just like in the zone, you like reach into the back, you grab the bag, you kind of have your head down and you're running. You're just going, you don't,
Yes.
there's so many times when it's like you don't really see what's going on until you get up to the door and take a look around, right?
Yeah. Oh, but just so you know, by the time this airs, my episode will come out because I finally did an episode for myself, and there's a story I'm telling that the beginning of it is the exact same thing. So when you say people might be like, how did you not like realize? You're just so flustered.
Because you're in the zone. You're in the zone. And
the
you're
only
still-
time you top to take stock of where you're at is when you put the bag down and you just like take the 3 steps back and you're like, and you look up and you're like, oh. So sorry to interrupt that, but I understand exactly what you're talking about.
To that point, I thought I was going to get killed by a dog one time because of that. Because I was in like rural wherever, and I parked, pulled it, and again, you're just in the zone. You're going. I ran up to the door, and no one was home, and the dog was around back of the house, and it came back around between me and my car.
That's a problem.
Huge problem, because I mean, we're talking. Problem. It was like a Rottweiler, like. Yeah. Furious dog.
It's never a Chihuahua that's outside. No, it's always huge. The big one. Yeah.
And it was pissed. And I was like, I'm going to have to beat the shit out of this dog with my bat. I mean, like, I was like.
You remember the old dogology talk?
Well, it was just like, you got to like hit it in the chin type thing.
Use your backpack.
Oh, you do? Like, well, and that bag is a weapon. And I was like, and like in that moment, all you can do is like, you just got to get big. And I'm like swearing at this dog, like, you want it? Let's go. Like, I'm going to freaking knock you out with the bag weighs probably 30 pounds, you know? Yeah. But I remember like that dog, I did not go back to that house. Needless to say, I don't care if they have kids. I ain't going back. Forget. Anyway, that's a different story. But anyway, so going back to Kyle's story. So Kyle, he's got the rookie with him, grabs his bag, he's running up to the door, and he goes up and he knocks on the door. Again, not paying attention. He takes his 3 steps back, side profile, and he's looking one way. And then he hears no one's inside the house. The woman is outside, like on the deck, right? And so she's home, and they've got young kids, but she's out on the deck. Well, it turns out it's summer, and she's laying out on the patio in the middle of the day, right? Even better, she's topless, of course, out on this patio.
It's the summer, man.
It's the summer. You don't want tan lines.
Sun's out.
Yeah, sun's out. You don't want tan lines. So she's topless. She says hello, and Kyle turns around, sees her topless. She is not embarrassed at all
whatsoever.
Turns out she's like European. She's like French or something, and she's like not embarrassed.
Very comfortable with the way she's dressed.
Super comfortable, like not embarrassed at all. And by Kyle's telling, very easy on the eyes. Like she's a very attractive woman that's out here like sunbathing topless on her patio in the middle of Vermont or wherever. And Kyle's like doesn't know what he's like stunned, right? He turns around and here's this like half naked woman, like, hey, how's it going? And she's just like talking to him, like no big deal, just having a conversation, accent, whatever. And she's like, oh, hey, what are you doing? And so Kyle like stumbles through his approach. He like stumbles. Mom? Yeah, he stumbles through his approach. And then she's like, and I think it was kind of one of those like, hey, yeah, do you have a place to sit down? She's like, oh, yeah, that sounds great. He ends up doing the demo with her while she's just like, at one point he's like, and at one point, like she can tell that he's flustered. Like, and I think Kyle's like, yeah, at one point she asked me, do you want me to go put a shirt on? And he's like, no, yeah, you're fine. Like, oh, totally fine. I'm cool.
It's great. I'm supposed to be here for 20 minutes, but we can make exceptions.
I'm cool if you're cool. Like, whatever. Like, I'm comfortable.
Kyle, if you're listening, please come tell us the story in more
I'm
detail.
telling you, man. Like he told me that story. I'm like, that is freaking fantastic. That's the best.
do,
So
do me a favor when my episode comes out, and I'll be to harp on this, but I have a story similar, I guess, in a way to this. You gotta go check out my ponytail. At least just you can skip forward if you want. I talk.
yeah,
It's
similar. Yeah. Well, Grant as well. Grant when he was on, did he tell you about going to the nude colony? Like
Grant Greeter.
he went to a nudist colony when he was selling books. Like, ask him if he hasn't told you that on the first time.
Oh, I will ask him next week when he's.
Oh, it's a great story. Like he rolled. He didn't. He like totally again same thing where like he grabbed the bag, went like I won't spoil all of it, but he ended up on a nudist colony and had no idea.
I'm so gonna ask Grant about this.
Ask him about the nudist colony. Yeah.
Amy, write this down. I need to.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Put that in the chat.
It's a good story.
We're all open with that. That way, you know it's gonna be a good episode. Be like, by the way, I know we're gonna talk about some stuff, but Grant.
I heard you went to a nudist colony. Yeah. Tell us about it. Yeah. So he that's a good one.
Oh my god, man.
So those are the and then of course one of my favorite stories, Yvette, if you haven't heard it, go back to Yvette's episode. She told the story about the books in a field, but I was out there when a kid left books in a field, and that is one of the best.
Were you the guy that went and found the books?
No, Ty. So Ty was the one that had to go find him. And that's the best part of the story. I love that part of the story where Yvette calls Ty and she's like, "Why are you answering your phone?"
He's like, "Oh, nothing." Yeah.
Like,
but then she's like, "We'll get to that
later." Yeah. I need you to do something else. Then Roy's like, "All right."
He's like, "What?"
Yeah. Like, "All right, here's where I need you to go. Like, drive here. Yeah. The best.
What are all these books doing here?
Yeah.
That episode was glorious.
The best part is that they were pretty much, because they were wrapped in plastic for the most part, they were salvageable. Thank goodness for that kid, because his parents would have owed like 20 grand.
Yeah. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow. And if you don't know what we're talking about, well, there you go. Episode 30. Go check out Yvette's episode. Oh, that patter. You love a good patter story.
So that was in my org. Like, and I remember that story was like legendary at the time, because you can't. It's hard to beat that.
You might have sold around the time Elena Arndt sold, right?
Yeah, I know Elena.
So Elena, she's great. Elena has been on the show before, but we had a pattern in Elena's org when I sold, and it was majestic. I mean, it was, the whole org was like delivered well over 100%, because this lady claimed that she hit more during deliveries on tack-ons, but she was just padding, just bullshitting. So the rest of the org was like, well, if this chick can do this, and I can like tack on all these units, and so like the rest of us like overperformed in deliveries, and turns out she was bullshitting the whole way.
It was a strategy. That's it.
She was planted by Yvette. All right. Let's go to some rapid fire questions. What do you think about that?
Yep. Go.
And again, rapid fire doesn't necessarily mean like quick. It just means whatever comes to mind for people listening, and then we'll go into some ponytails and wrap this sucker up. Here we go. All right. Favorite territory that you sold in, as far as state that you sold in, and why was it New Hampshire?
New Hampshire would be up there for sure. I love New Hampshire. Similarly would be Connecticut. I loved Connecticut. It was very similar to Southern New Hampshire. It was like rural, but money and names worked. And both of those were great. Loved both.
Not Massachusetts. Fuck Massachusetts.
Man, Massachusetts was, I mean, the good news is if you got to sit down, they were probably going to buy.
They're going to buy it,
But if they did, like, getting sit downs was rough.
I went from rural upstate New York my first summer to Massachusetts in Haverhill and North Andover my second summer. And it took me a minute to adjust to the fact that I just wasn't going to sit down with everybody.
Yeah.
It was crazy. I agree. All right. Favorite kind of turf. And it sounds like upscale country. Yeah. But like people that live on like acreages, you know, like nice, like neighborhoods, but like the houses are spread out a little bit, you know? Like I always liked gold.
Yeah, it's the best. Especially if it's a place where the people know each other and you can get the names going. Like, it's the best. And for the record, and you might disagree, territory matters. And this is why, because you can have your favorites. You know what I'm saying? If it didn't matter, you wouldn't have a favorite. Okay. Favorite advanced sales. I loved Todd McWhorter, right? Like Mondo. It was like Mondo. It was good stuff. It was funny. Yeah. I loved it because like you listen to it during the day and it would make you laugh, but it was also good stuff. And like that was one that I definitely listened to. Yeah. Todd's been on, by the way. If you check out his episodes, really good. Oh, nice. I'm sure it's good. His all sales, of them are good, but Matt's was good too. But like I remember I listened to McWhorter's a lot. Yeah.
And Yvette had a good one too. And of course, there's the Bill Zizzy,
Yep, that one's
classic.
good.
But
Yeah.
I get Todd's. Okay, favorite HQ. You kind of hit this one already. So
I'd probably say the ultimate, like everything put together, is probably the first one, because Dan was awesome, and I got to live with Matt, and it was just, yeah, it was fun.
can't beat that.
Yeah.
Favorite breakfast spot besides Dunkin' Donuts.
Hard, yeah. How can you beat Dunkin', right? What was my favorite breakfast spot? Probably my third summer. We ate at a Greek diner in, I think was it Madison? I don't know, it doesn't matter, but somewhere on the Long Island Sound. We ate at this Greek diner. The food was great. It was super cheap, and the people looked at us like we were total weirdos when we did executives in the parking lot. And it was like by a highway, so like we got a good, like, people were watching.
Yeah.
Like,
did you get any of them to do execs with you?
No, I did not.
Dude, that was the goal every summer. It is so good. That's the best when they're like, well, okay, I guess I'll do this with you. You're like, all right. Okay, favorite follow date, whether someone followed you or you followed them.
By the way, I got to go back, listen to Emmy's episode, the Triple K Diner or whatever that you went to. That is insane. That is insane. The fact that they didn't put 2 and 2 together, that they're like in the South and the place was called Triple K. Like, what are you doing? Get out of there.
Like, oh my God.
Get out. Like, get out. What is happening?
You're selling was in Alabama. I think that you're selling. It's like, you're down there
Yeah.
when you go to a breakfast spot called the Triple K.
The Triple K. Yeah. No. Leave. You're about to be abducted. Like, that's terrible. Sorry, I derailed. What was your question?
It's all good. Favorite follow day.
Man, there were a ton of them. I could probably go lots of ways. I had my last summer. Anthony Merkel came and followed me my last summer, and there's just something about, like, I was on my 5th summer. He was probably on like his 7th summer. That's just fun. Like, when you just have 2 people that are just going out, and we were just messing with people and goofing around, and we just had fun all day.
Those are the best. Oh yeah, I followed my brother. What would have been my 4th. Actually, I skipped a summer, so I think it was both of our 4ths or whatever. But it was like, it's when it's not a rookie, it's so fun. I agree.
Well, and you just know all the moves, right? Like, if you got to do the bathroom close, like, they know to go to the car or whatever. Like, just all that stuff. Like,
you don't have to explain the basic shit. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, you're right. Actually, well said. You're right. Favorite off schedule story.
Favorite off schedule story. So I don't know that it's not like favorite or like most interesting. It's not really funny, I don't think. But I had my 3rd summer, just by happenstance. I was again, a girl comes up. I was dating a girl, and I was dating a girl that I had started dating a girl that spring, and I was into her and I liked her. And then I remember I was going off to sell books that summer, and that was going to happen. I knew that was the case. And then it just so happened, like lightning bolt, or good, probably more bad, she got a job again, we're from Nebraska. She went to Creighton. She got a job at a summer camp in Connecticut that summer.
Go.
And I was selling in Connecticut. But it actually isn't that, like, but it didn't, it's not actually a good story, because like nothing that interesting happened. Like, it was kind of, we were trying to like talk throughout the summer, and it actually ended up becoming the fact that like she ended up meeting a different guy at the camp that summer. And it ended up being this very, like, it kind of ended up getting me off schedule late in the summer. And I remember I took a day off and I went and met with her and like a friend she had met like at the beach. And it was just this very sad, like you went and you could just, like, the writing was just totally on the wall that like it was done. Like, we were
scheduled. Listen, you got off schedule to go get dumped.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, I mean, dude.
It didn't happen like in that moment, but it was one of those where like you go and it's like you're trying to like kind of like salvage it, and then you go with them and you go to the beach with her and her friend, and then you realize this isn't happening.
This crew isn't gonna work.
No, this isn't going
This is
anywhere.
not a crewing situation here.
Yeah.
You can't found your way out of this.
Nope. So that, I guess I would say, I don't know if it's a good, I mean, it's an interesting story. I don't know if it was a good story, but it was.
Bro, people get off schedule to do way better things. I went to the movies. You out
I
here
mean, I
going
went
to
to the,
go
I
get
went
like
to
a
the,
hard date.
I went to the movies too. But like, that's not that. I don't feel like it's that interesting. Like, I went to the movies. Like
Oh, dude.
later summers when I got to like my fourth summer in Haverhill, I
Uh,
definitely was off schedule.
yeah. Best
Stuff like
movie you
that.
saw. Come on. A little bit
The best
08,
movie I
09.
saw on the
Transformers coming out.
no
Dark Knight.
the Dark Knight came out when I
Yeah,
was
dude.
selling books.
Okay, I would. It's worth it.
So here's the thing. I remember going to it. Oh, like yeah, in that regard, like The Dark Knight is one of those movies where I feel like it was like a top 5 walk out of the theater experience going to that movie.
Oh,
I remember distinctly going to it and walking out and being like, that was like, I mean, you know, I was like, that was cinema. I was like, I walked out being like, that
yeah.
was unbelievable.
That same summer, I watched it too. It was the first movie in my life that I went, I need to go back and watch that again in theaters. So I went back to the ticket booth.
Because the opening scene is incredible. Incredible in that movie. And the whole thing is great, but like that movie is so good, and the opening scene is like phenomenal movie making. And yeah, I didn't like. Yeah, I was definitely off schedule. My fourth summer was my worst summer in terms of being off schedule, and that happened to be the summer that The Dark Knight I think came out. And I saw The Dark Knight on a few occasions. I think that summer.
Oh, so, dude, yeah. I would have been off schedule every day. I would have been at the movie theater, especially on Tuesdays. It's like $5 to get into the theater at that time. Like just. Brilliant. Yeah. By the way, if you're selling it's your first summer, don't go to the movies. Go hit some couple 100,000 units or something. And then
the worst part too is that the problem that I had as well is that you kind of play these. I mean, that gets into some serious stuff. You like play these games with yourself where I would do the thing where like I was good enough. Like I had days where I sold 100 units and I was off schedule.
Same.
Because like you could go out and like in the morning you'd go
by 11.
I remember going out and I remember one morning I went out and I sold like 90 units in the morning. I went to the movies in the afternoon. Then I went, but I was like, fine, I'll go work gravy. And I sold like, I think I had like 150 unit day. And that's like, obviously, anyone listening, you like trick yourself, with that stuff. And I'm like, well, I guess I can just do this and it's fine.
It's Jake Swenson helped me realize this when I was interviewing him. And he goes, that must have been really hard for you. And I hadn't really considered it that way. I'm like, because I always thought it was easy to be out of schedule. He goes, it must have been hard for you to just lie about it. Because I lied about it. At the time, I told my OL, oh yeah, I worked all day, just was not lucky. And that's why, I only sold 30 units or 0, whatever. Yeah. But I was lying about it. But you're right. I mean, it's a lie that you're telling yourself. It's a lie you're telling your superiors which really is so dumb to think about now back. But at the time, there was so much pressure to not be off schedule that you just felt bad, even though you were still good. I mean, the raw skill that you had picked up from it, you knew you could do well if you really you're like, if I wanted to, I probably would have sold 200 units today, but I didn't want to. And that wrestling thing is that some people don't really understand that when they sell books. Like, how dare you even get off schedule? And you're like, I don't know, man. I get it. So, okay. All right. Now, on the opposite of that, favorite sales day. Now, this could be because it was your best sales day. I don't know. Or it could be just your favorite because, I almost quit and then I didn't. Or I shit my pants and then I don't know.
No, my favorite sales day, I had a couple of days where I had over 300 units. And those are fun.
Damn, Keith.
Because you're mostly selling.
Keith is
when you have a day where, I would say my favorite, I had a couple. I had one, the one that sticks out to me the most probably is, I remember it was a weird day in some respects. Like the week that I hit Mort, it was a kind of an odd week because I had this focus I was really wanting to hit Mort. That was a big focus that second summer. I was very determined to do it. And I was super on schedule my second summer for sure. And I hit it like week 10. It took me like almost all summer before I finally hit it. And I remember the week that it happened, I think I almost kind of let go of it a little bit. And it's probably why it happened. Because I remember the first day of that week, I sold like 80 units, which is just like a whatever day, right? When you're trying to hit more, like 80 units, you're like, you got to average like 170 a day or something to hit more. And so 80 units, I'm like, whatever. And I remember that second day, I don't know what happened. Like, I don't know if I just kind of let go and I didn't care, but I had been in the turf for a while and my names were rolling. I was confident. And it was an odd day where every single person that I sat down with bought books for me that day. It was like this really weird, like low sit down day.
Yeah.
I think I had like 12 sit downs, and every
Everybody bought.
single one bought,
Yeah. Yeah.
all of them.
My best day in the book field, I had 8 customers, 8 sit downs.
But like that was weird for me because like 12 sit, like I was pretty good at getting like 15. I was in the 15 to 20 sit downs a day. That was always
Yeah.
where I was at. And so it was an odd day in the sense that I didn't get as many sit downs as I normally would, but there's just something about it where like, man, if I was like so locked in and in the
You're just
zone that
flowing.
if you were sitting
Yeah.
down with me, you're getting them. They're buying.
Yeah.
And that was
And
how that day rolled. And I remember at the end of the day, I
yeah.
looked up and I think I did like 320 units or something like that
Yeah.
day.
And the thing is, you average 20 minutes per house per sit down. But in reality, if someone's buying, by the time you fill out the order, you do the names and the pre-approach.
It's half an hour,
It's half
40
an
minutes.
hour, 45
Yeah.
minutes. Yeah. So, but if it's a really cool family you connected with, it
Yeah.
could be an hour, and then you just go and have a couple sit downs that are 10 minutes that are quick no's. You're like quick, but in that case, you're not expecting that. Oh, you're gonna buy two, okay? And then you look up your order pad and you're way past the 10 that you had scheduled for yourself. You're like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing, but it's 10:30 and someone just bought, and I don't think I've missed today. Like you
And that
just
was I remember like in the moment, like I was never a person I never really counted units in the middle of the day, fortunately. But I mean, you're always kind of aware of how you're doing. You can look at your goal
yeah,
card, you see your sales or
you
whatever.
have a ballpark.
And I remember sitting down with somebody that day, and your confidence. And that's the thing too. Like when you're like 7 for 7 or 8 for 8,
Dude,
you can give two shits.
say
Like
something to me, Karen,
you,
please.
like you don't care. Like
Yeah.
you just don't. You're so in the zone. You don't care at all. Like, and I remember very distinctly. Like that's when you know you're so in the zone. I remember sitting down with somebody that night, and I'm just like, yeah, I don't. Your buying atmosphere is like through the roof. And I remember selling somebody that I'm like, it was like I had that thought leaving, like, I can't believe those people, like, there's no way those people should have bought from me. And they
Yeah.
did.
But
You
you
know what
just
I
didn't
mean? Like
care. Yeah.
you're just that, like your buying atmosphere is so through the roof and you're just like so
Yeah.
in the zone and doing your deal that, yeah, that was probably my favorite day where it just kind of felt like it flowed. And then, yeah, that then springboarded me. I went like, that was the thing where I almost freaked myself out the week that I had my best, that I hit Mort that first time. So I had like an 80 unit day, then I had a 320 unit day, and then I backed it up with like a 250 unit day. So like back to back.
Shit.
So
You're
I
at PC
like
by Wednesday.
Wednesday I had like 700 units or something like
Jeez,
that.
bro.
And I almost like psyched myself out. Like at that point, you're
Yeah.
just kind of like, holy shit, if I don't hit Mort, I'm like a total failure.
And then
You
it
know what
goes
I
in
mean?
your
Like,
head. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and then you're in your head.
My best week ever, I had like 700 somewhere. I think the first time I hit PC or something. It was my first summer. And I had 275 on a Monday.
Yeah.
The next day it was like 18 units.
Oh yeah.
Because it's
In
just, you're just
your
like,
head.
I can't do that again. Like there's so much pressure. It's weird.
It is weird.
It.
Yeah.
All right. Last two. Biggest family by numbers that you sold to that you remember. As in like total members of the family. Like there were 16 kids and 2 parents or something like that. If you can remember.
I will say this. I don't think I remember a big fan. I'm sure I sold to a family that had like 6, 7 kids. More interestingly, though, I sold to a deaf family one time.
Okay.
And it was awesome. It was so awesome. Here's why. So I remember.
By the way, Amy, I think we need to add favorite family or most interesting family to these rapid fire questions. We'll throw that in there. Sorry, go ahead. I've never asked that before, but we all have that one.
It was like a Saturday and it was totally out of the blue. And I think I was like a house I didn't even have pre-approach on. And I remember knocking on it and one of the adults came to the door and it became clear. I started doing my approach and then it became very clear that they were deaf and I think they could maybe read my lips, but obviously then they couldn't really talk to me. But I think they could read my lips and they invited me in, or I don't know if the kid came, but it basically was like, if you've seen the movie Coda, it was like a Coda situation. Like both the parents were deaf, but their kids could all hear. So it was really interesting. They had like 3 or 4 kids, they could all hear. And so I remember I got in and I sat down with them and it was super cool. Like it was this very odd experience where like everybody's gathered around, the parents are both there. And I'm like doing the demo. Basically, I'm demoing the kids, which we would do anyway. And then the kids would be like doing sign language to the parents. Wow. And they're like reading my lips. And all of that was all fine and good. But what then started entering into my head is I can tell that they were into it and the kids liked it. And it seemed like the parents were with me. and then, but what I started thinking in my head was, how do I close these people that can't hear? Because look, this is all fine to do the presentation and do the, the intro and the presentation, but eventually, so what everybody likes about the way I do business. You gotta get to
Yeah.
that part. And I just remember being like, in your head, it's that whole thing of like, well, what are you gonna do? Like, you just close everybody. And so basically I had to like, I shut my book and I just was like closing the like 16-year-old daughter. And then I would like say two lines, and then she would like sign two lines to the parents, and then I'd say two lines, and she'd say two lines to the parents. And then whatever. So basically at this point, all I need to know is, do you guys get your mail here at the post office? And I just put my head down, and then the parents like were like signing to each other, talking, and then one of them just went to get the checkbook. That was that.
Wow.
I was like,
That's wild.
it was unbelievable. I was like,
Yeah.
this is crazy. Yeah.
That's
Yep.
wild.
So that's, I mean, I don't remember a house that had like 28 kids, but I do remember that house where it was just like, that was, yeah, that was
Strange.
totally unique. Totally
Yeah.
unique.
That doesn't
And
happen
it,
regularly.
and it was so, I remember it very distinctly, that feeling of like, how do I close these people that can't hear what I'm saying?
Yeah, dude.
But they bought. It was awesome. They were cool.
That's pretty sick.
Yeah, it was
All
cool.
right. All right. Last rapid fire question, and then we'll go into the ponytail. Most famous person you met?
So I had a couple. So my last summer, I think I met a guy that was like a drummer in Paramore, maybe.
Nice.
Yeah, it was a band like that. He was like a drummer or a guitarist or whatever, and they had bought books a previous summer. They like bought some CDs for me, but they were like previous customers, which is great. So I got to add them to my names list. Great name. The most interesting famous person that I met, though, was a guy that was a professional fisherman, and he had a show on Nessun up in the Northeast. So for anybody that didn't sell up there, Nessun is like a regional sports network that would show Red Sox games. And his name was Charlie Moore, and he was a professional fisherman. He had a show on Nessun and on ESPN for a while. And I remember when I knocked on his door, that was the introduction to it. Like, I didn't have any pre-approach on it, but he had a nice house, had a couple like awesome fishing, like super high-end fishing boats in the driveway, obviously. And I went up, knocked on the door, and he answered. I had no clue who he was. And he was kind of short with me, but not in like a rude way, but he's like, hey man, I'm sure this is great, but like, I got a film crew from ESPN here right now. I really can't talk right now. And I'm like, what? Film like ESPN? What are you talking about? And that was kind of it. And then he had to go, and so it was like, what? Da, da, da. And so then I asked the neighbors, I'm like, who's this guy over here? And they're like, oh, that's Charlie Moore. Yeah, he's a pro fisherman. He's got a TV. Anyway, if you like Wikipedia him, he still, I think, has shows on like Nessun or ESPN, but he's like a TV personality. And anyway, yeah. Anyway, he blew me off, but then during deliveries, I came back, and his wife bought like 50 units from me during deliveries, which was awesome. So,
Dude.
and then they bought.
And then they bought. Wow, what a way to springboard us into
Yeah.
what is effectively our last story of the evening.
Sounds good.
So now, people who haven't listened before, Ponytails, obviously, thus the name of the podcast, is where we ask our guests to share their favorite story, most impactful story, most memorable story, funniest thing, craziest thing. We've had a variety, as you can imagine. So, we had our 200th episode was our favorite from 200. If you want to check out what we mean by Ponytails. But we look forward to this part of the episode because this is like our favorite way to kind of put a bow on the whole thing. So without further ado, Mr. Keith Hoogheem's favorite story from the book field, his
Awesome.
ponytail.
So this one's a little bit more earnest. I remember my last week on the book field of my first summer. I was very determined to hit the President's Club dinner. And I had sold 600 units 1 week earlier in the summer. And it was the last week of the summer, so this is my last chance, right? You got to hit it twice to go to the President's Club dinner the next year. And I knew that I knew I was going to come back for another summer, and I knew I really wanted to go to that dinner. And so I was super focused and determined on it. So going into that last week, I was locked in. I was doing my deal. I was jamming. I had a good turf. Names were going. And I was rolling into Friday, and I was sitting on like 450 units rolling into Friday. So I'm in a great spot, right? Like, I'm feeling good. I'm on pace. I got a Friday and I got a Saturday, and all I need is 150 units. I can, like, I've done that a bunch of times already this summer. I got this, right? Famous last words. So I roll into Friday. I'm feeling good. Music's cranking, going to my turf in southern New Hampshire. And I go up to the first house, knock on the door. I get a sit down, the very first house of the day. They don't buy, but I'm feeling good, right? Knock on the door before 8 o'clock. I got to sit down. I'm on the board with sit downs. I'm like, awesome. This is going to be a great day. I'm going to hit it today. It's going to be awesome. Today's the day. I go out to my car, jump in, turn the key, nothing. Dead as a doornail. Totally dead.
Brutal.
And I'm working like country, like southern New Hampshire. I'm working that nice. It's like spread out. It's pretty nice turf, kind of longish driveways. And so even if I wanted to, like, grabbing the book bag and walking isn't really an option. The houses are just too far apart.
Yeah.
And so again, you don't use your phone. And in fact, I don't even know that first summer. If I had a cell phone, like, it barely worked. It was probably like Zach Morris cell phone.
Razor.
Yeah, who knows? Yeah, I had a Razor back then for sure. And it didn't do much.
You couldn't, like, Google mechanic.
No, you couldn't Google anything. So I had to, I'm still in the driveway, car won't start. I had the mom call the closest auto shop, right? And she calls, we get a tow truck. Fast forward, long story short, it takes about 4 hours. By the time they come out, they pick up my car, they hook it up, they take it to the shop, they get me, I ride with them, they figure out what's wrong with the car. It turns out it was just a dead battery, but whatever. By the time they finally get me going, it's like noon. So I've lost like the whole morning at that point. And that was the other thing. The auto shop was like out in the middle of nowhere. I couldn't really like go and like walk and get in demos and like hit people up. So I was just kind of stuck where I was. So anyway, at this point, it's like 12 or 12:30, and I'm sitting on one demo for the day, one sit down, still at 450 units or so. But I'm feeling good because I'm like, well, I got my car, it's set up, now I can go, let's jam. And in some ways, like, you get that sick feeling where it can get repetitive on the book field. And so sometimes, like, when a weird thing like that happens, it's kind of fun. It's almost exciting, right? Because you're like, cool, it's like a new challenge.
I've heard these stories. And
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I could be this is going to be a story on Ponytail Sunday.
Right. It kind of becomes like this. It's just different, right? Because like if the normal day, the days can just run together. Where it's like you get up, you go do 30 demos, and da. And so there's just something about like having an obstacle like that it was in a way kind of like a challenge. It was like fun, and I'm like, I remember very distinctly, like as I was sitting there and they were getting my car and it was fixed up, saying to myself, I'm sitting on one demo at noon. I'm like, I don't care I'm getting 30 demos today. That was my thing. I'm like, I'm getting 30 demos today. I've gotten 30 demos every day, all summer long. I don't care that I just had my car broken down. I'm getting 30. And so that's what I did. I was like a madman, focused, like laser intensity, and I busted my ass. I worked past 10 o'clock that night. I worked all day. I got 30 demos at like 10, 15 at night. I walked out of the last house getting 30 demos, and I sold zero, nothing, not one thing. And I think I'd only had one other, like, I fortunately, like, I was on schedule and it came easily enough where like I think I had one other 0 day that summer. This was maybe my second 0 day of the summer where I legitimately worked all day, did the thing, and I didn't sell anything. And I remember driving home that day, and this is when I knew that I had been sufficiently brainwashed for that summer. I honestly remember, like, this is honest to God, I felt fantastic driving home that night that I had gotten 30 demos. Because that was the thing that I said to myself, was like, I've gotten 30 demos every day all summer. I'm going to get 30 demos today. And I remember that was my focus. And I was working like a crazy person that afternoon to do that. And I did it. I got 30 by the end of that day. And I legitimately, even though I had sold zero and I was bummed about that, I legitimately felt like the system owed me. I was like, man, I did everything that I could do. I totally controlled everything I could control. There was nothing I could have done better today. And I legitimately drove home that night not bummed about it.
Oh,
which is
awesome.
Which is like,
because you're like, I'm
weird.
due tomorrow or someday. Like
Exactly. That is
something's,
exactly how I felt.
I'm about to crush it. Yeah.
That is
That's amazing. What a
that is,
perspective.
and that's the thing. Like again, going back to that point of perspective is like you had two options. Like the facts were what they were. Like I had done 30 demos and I hadn't sold anything. Those were the facts. At that point, you could either be really like frustrated and pissed and upset and carry that over in the next day. But I don't know what it was. Like something about it. Like I just felt really, really good about the fact that I did 30 demos. Like I did what I knew that I could do. I did my part. And like I legitimately was not mad. Like I felt good because I was like, what else could I have done? Like I did what I know how to do.
Yeah.
And so going into that last day, that was exactly my feeling where I was like, man, you know what? I don't know what's going to happen, but like something good. I'm owed. The system owes me today. Like I did what I was supposed to do yesterday. And I just like, that was the attitude that I carried into that day where I'm like, it's a Saturday. I need whatever. I need 150 units. I don't think I'd done that. I think I kind of needed like, basically I needed like my best day of the summer to hit 600. For that week. And I just rolled into that day with an attitude of like, you know what? I did everything I could do. It's a Saturday. I'm going to have fun. It's my last sales day of the summer. The system's going to pay. I'm just going to do what I can do 30 demos, have fun, and fast forward, long story short, I sold 170 units my last day.
Oh, let's
summer.
Go. Yes, sir.
I had my best day
Damn.
of the summer on the last day of the summer. And I hit 600 and I hit the PC dinner. And wow. I remember it was incredible. Like I remember at the end of that giving, I remember driving.
Lesson.
It was incredible. Like I remember driving home that day, just like,
damn.
It was amazing. Like it just felt like I was on cloud nine. I could have like Barney Rubbled that car home, or Fred Flintstone, I guess, the car home that night. Like I was on the top, top of the world. Felt amazing.
Wow, dude. That's sick.
Yep.
That is a story right there of like just redemption. Let's go.
Yeah.
Oh, that makes me want to go knock on a door. Yeah. What is it? It's 8:47 my time. Technically,
yeah,
I'm still on schedule.
You can still do it. Yeah.
Let's go next door.
It's like, Andres, why are you here? What is going on? Yeah.
Oh man, dude, that was damn. We haven't had a good like. This is almost like and then they bop it. It's more like a redemption of just believing this. The way that must have changed your life going forward. I mean, the way you approach life today, where it's like, hey, you know what? Today didn't happen for me, but I'm due because I put in all you can do is all you can do. Mm-hmm. Ain't nothing more than all you can do. Mm-hmm. Right. And you did that. Done. It paid you back. It owed you. And then you got paid back and then some.
Well, and it reminds you that it is definitely it reminds you that it's a perspective thing. And I still get those stories from clients that I talked to today. Like I was talking to a guy today that coaching, and he's a financial advisor, and he was talking about one of the guys that he works with from Michigan that had a stretch last year where as a financial advisor, insurance salesman, he was like number one in his state. He went 36 appointments in a row at one point last year where he didn't make a sale. 36 in a row. And this is a guy who's like 20 years in the business, been doing it a long time, sure. Really successful. But it happens. It does. And like, what are you going to do? Like, you have one of two choices. You can either get mad at the world and kick and scream and piss and moan, or you can try to have that attitude of, I can control what I can control, and that's my time, my activity, my attitude, and go out the next day and believe that I'm owed, the system owes me. Like, it's going to happen.
Which, by the way, nobody blames you for believing that the world's against you. And it's a valid way to feel completely. And that's not to invalidate people's feelings, but there's just a way that you choose to look at the situation. You go, no, I'm better than this, and I know I'm owed. Yeah. Rent's due, and I paid it, which means I'm owed the cush, the place to live. Mm-hmm. Damn, dude. What a way to close this one, man. I'm glad you chose this story to by the way, all your stories were so good.
Thank you. There was a lot of them. So
yeah.
It's long.
Yeah. But I loved it. I like when I every once in a while we have like episodes that are more like, what are you up to now heavy? So then we need to balance those out with the Bookfield stories heavy. And this one was gold. Like there was just so many good relatable stories. Oh man, I hope you had fun.
Yeah, I had a blast.
On the show.
Again, it's hard, and obviously all the things, but like again, back to one of the things I said however long ago we started. Like, there's so many great things that I took away from selling books and the people and everything. Like, yeah, were there negative? Sure, but I had so many great experiences. Like, I really enjoyed my time,
Good.
selling books.
And I hope Emmy didn't oversell it.
Yeah.
So happy to hear that. Shout out to her. If you see her soon, tell her I said hello.
She's always even keeled. She's not going to oversell it. Like,
she's so cool. So,
Yeah.
But anyway, man, if you guys want to find Keith, if you're maybe curious, maybe you're thinking, hey, how do I get some coaching from Keith? I want to hear more about this. So if you want to, maybe you sold with Keith and you're in the force, maybe you're a Morta and you just want to say hello. You can find him on LinkedIn. You can find him on Facebook. Go make sure to check out Southwestern Consulting if that's something you think you need some coaching on. If you feel like you're the Jordan that needs the Phil Jackson, I'm sure you can find your Phil over there. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, this has been the Ponytails Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. My name is Andres Gamboa. I appreciate it if you made it to the end. Thank you so much. Have a good evening. Bye-bye, everybody.